Chapter 1597. Li Qingshan woke up from the primordial dream and immediately closed his eyes again. The grand picture of the battle of mending the heavens was still clearly visible. The primordial spirit turtle hid in the vast ocean, unleashing surging floods that drowned the mountains on the ground. The dragons had a leader, and the phoenixes soared in the sky, facing off against each other. There was also the primordial Qilin's final glance from afar. Even though he had never seen her face clearly, he would never be able to forget her figure that mended the heavens. Goddess Nuwa. Unlike what he had originally thought, the primordial Qilin was not her enemy. Instead, it was fighting for her. A path was not equivalent to a choice. Even primordial gods who had reached the supreme realm of void refinement and unity, or even primordial gods who were born with the world, were still sentient beings. They could not be like the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, only obeying the laws of nature. If gods like that did exist, then it was no different from not existing. The primordial Qilin had demonstrated its existence. It did not abide by the laws of nature that it was born with, standing by and doing nothing. In the end, it died to the lightning. If the heavens have feelings, the heavens will grow old. An indescribable feeling lingered in his heart. Once again, he stared at the demon heart of Black Sun in his hand. It did not move at all, like a statue of a god, standing from the primordial to the future. The divine hall fell silent. It remained silent for a very long time. Bang! After who knew how long, a rumble broke the silence. The door to the divine hall opened. The green-winged bat king staggered in and knelt before the statue. "Sir, the cult master has been taken away. Please save her." However, the moment he saw the gloomy sun in the statue's hand, he immediately cast everything to the back of his mind. He stared straight at it. There was only a single thought in his mind. I have to obtain it. I have to obtain it. He could not help but make his way over and extend his hand. The statue slowly opened its eyes and glanced past him. There was a flash of light. The green-winged bat king suddenly stopped and knelt on the ground again. He continued to stare at the demon heart of Black Sun, uneasily as he struggled. Li Qingshan understood the temptation of the demon heart of Black Sun, to demon folk. Let alone a measly demon king, even demon gods could not resist it. He shouldn't have resisted, but he didn't want to bear such a fate. If he was willing to sacrifice billions of lives just to become a god, then Li Qingshan would not be Li Qingshan, and Knight-errant King would be a big joke. Even without this Black Sun demon heart, he was confident that he could still become a god without being bound by fate. I don't want to be a savior. With this conviction in mind, he put away the Black Sun devil heart. Let the blissful return to the blissful, and the demonic domain return to the demonic domain. He lowered his head and asked the green-winged bat king, "What happened?" The green-winged bat monarch returned to normal and said in grief and indignation, "Traitor! The left emissary of light must have betrayed the cult master when handing over the customs documents." Is she still alive? Gloomy clouds shrouded the dusky city. Tall buildings stood stiffly and dimly. Under the street lamps, the cold rain fell constantly as if it would never stop. However, in the very depths of the forest in the city, there was actually a restaurant with carved balustrades and jade-like eaves. It was resplendent with lanterns and a hubbub of voices. It formed a sharp contrast with the gloomy, depressing scenery around it. It gave off a surreal feeling. Outside the restaurant, a banner with a smiling pig's face fluttered in the wind. At this moment, the owner of the pig's face raised his cup and drained it in a single gulp, showing off the bottom of the cup. He apologized to the guests for his tardiness. All the demon kings and demon emperors in the demonic city had gathered together. Only the demon kings had a seat, which was a large, round table. Cutlery had already been arranged on it, while the demon emperors could only stand and watch. Demon kings had no right to enter at all. The demon kings had already waited for quite a while, but they did not show any impatience at all. Even when they spoke softly. And they were all immaculately dressed. They had dressed up meticulously like upper-class people. If a regular person barged in, they would never be able to imagine just how vicious and terrifying their original appearances were. "Welcome, Lord Evil God," the demon kings said in unison. The owner of this pig's face was the owner of this gluttonous gluttony building, as well as the owner of the demonic city, Evil God White Dolphin. Evil God White Dolphin was also dressed neatly, but he wore an apron in front of him. He held a kitchen knife in his hand and he looked like a chef. His white pig's face was even more amiable. He waved his hands lightly. Sit down, sit down. Don't be so courteous. Be casual. This is a meal, not a war." The demon emperors all sat down, each of them dignified and solemn. They did not relax at all. In front of evil god White Dolphin they might not be punished if they were defeated, but if they dared to be careless while eating they would definitely lose their lives. There was once a demon emperor who smacked his lips while eating, and evil god White Dolphin chopped off his head on the spot. The demon emperors did not even dare to breathe loudly. Evil god White Dolphin nodded in satisfaction. Today's banquet is called the Radiant Banquet. All the dishes are made from the same ingredient. This ingredient was not easy to obtain and it took up a lot of effort. But as long as I can have a bite of it, all the effort is worth it. He clapped his hands and a muscular demon emperor walked out with a huge object in his arms. He gently placed it beside evil god White Dolphin. The object was covered by a layer of black cloth and no one could see what it was. Evil god White Dolphin snorted and tore off the black cloth, revealing a huge cross that was engraved with runes. A woman was tied to it and her upper body was naked, revealing a full and slender waist. The lower half of her body was in the shape of a snake. It was round and long and its color was alluring. It coiled around the cross. The demon emperors gasped. This woman was clearly a demon emperor as well. Could it be that evil god White Dolphin's appetite was so big that it could not be suppressed, and it started to eat the demon emperors? Everyone could not help but feel insecure. Evil god White Dolphin smiled and said, "Let me introduce to everyone, this is the famous Ming cult's cult leader." The demon emperors were in an uproar. They instantly understood the origin of this radiant banquet, but they felt that it was inconceivable. The demon emperors below looked at one another. Their faces were filled with disbelief. In the past few years the Ming cult had been wreaking havoc. All the demon folk had been trying to guess the Ming cult's cult leader's identity. They all thought he came from the outside world, either the desireless heavenly palace or the pure land of bliss. Never did they imagine he was actually a demon emperor? How was that possible? Actions of such kindness and justice would definitely be rejected by the demonic realm, and this demon emperor was clearly shrouded in heavenly favor. Only evil god White Dolphin vaguely guessed her plan, and he sighed in amazement. If she just left it like this, the demon domain would probably gain another evil god before long. Under the woman's messy hair, her eyelids were lifted silently, and as a result, an image seeped into her mind. Through the tense silence of her body, it vanished in her mind. Evil god White Dolphin turned around and asked her, "Are you?" Qian Rongji smiled. "I am. What do you have to say?" "The strong prey on the weak. That's the principle of the world." "Good, very good." Evil god White Dolphin stroked her face, sliding down her neck. His heart surged, not from desire but from appetite. "You're the best ingredient I've ever seen. I definitely won't waste a single bit of you." Evil god White Dolphin raised his blade and swung down. Over a dozen pieces of translucent, white meat as thin as cicadas' wings flew out, landing on the round table. Qian Rongji was completely unscathed, but the skin below her ribs suddenly caved in. An indescribable pain radiated from there. The snake wrapped around the cross tightly, creaking. The blade did not just cut away her flesh. It even cut away her soul. The first dish is called Sliced Radiance. You can eat it raw, taking its original flavor. Evil god White Dolphin introduced proudly. He took the initiative to offer a plate to the burly demon emperor. "Envoy of the left, you've done very well." "Thank you, evil god." "Thank you, evil god." Envoy of the left was surprised and overjoyed. He glanced at Qian Rongji on the cross and put the piece of meat into his mouth. He instantly revealed an intoxicated expression. The next moment, his expression changed abruptly, becoming as colorful as a snake's tail. "There's poison, air." He grabbed his neck tightly with both hands. Every muscle on his body was twitching, turning into colorful snake-like smoke. They wrapped around and penetrated his body. In the blink of an eye, he was engulfed by the poisonous smoke and colorful snakes. The demon emperors were shocked. They leaned back and moved further away from the meat on the plate. Evil god White Dolphin waved his hand and dispersed the smoke and snakes. He chuckled. "Pufferfish is poisonous. To know its taste you have to take some risks. However, this ingredient of mine is thousands of times more poisonous than pufferfish. Not everyone can handle it. What are you waiting for?" He looked at the demon emperors with his pig eyes. Under the bright lights, he suddenly looked a little gloomy. The demon emperors did not dare to delay. They activated their demonic energy to suppress the poison while putting the sliced radiance into their mouths. It melted in their mouths. In an instant, an extremely delicious taste spread in their mouths. Even the poison itself was a part of this taste, but it was not among the 5 tastes of sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and salty. Instead, it was a strong and pure joy that stimulated their minds. Evil god White Dolphin also took a bite and showed an intoxicated expression. He was the chef of demon god Tautai. Normal chefs could only mix the 5 tastes. How could they satisfy the appetite of a demon god? But he could treat joy as sweetness, sorrow as bitterness, anger as spiciness, and jealousy as sourness. With just one bite he could taste all the flavors in the world. Moreover, the taste was ever-changing. Every ingredient was different. No one could predict the taste before it entered the mouth. Wait, why sweet? Where's the anger of being betrayed by your subordinates? Where's the fear of being killed and eaten? Evil god White Dolphin frowned. He tasted it carefully. Apart from the sweet aftertaste, he could not taste anything else. When he turned around, he saw that the radiant king's lips were curled up into a smile. What are you smiling about? Fate. Why does it have to be now? Qian Rongji was amused. Her smile was strange and filled with malice. What fate? Evil god White Dolphin felt anxious. Hurry up and eat. It's my treat. Qian Rongji raised her chin. The tiger is coming. Boom. A bolt of lightning shook the dark clouds and tore the sky apart. Chapter 1598. In the Gluttony God building, the banquet was in full swing. Tiger? White Dolphin Evil God frowned and licked his lips. Tiger bone soup, humph, it couldn't be better. He waved the kitchen knife in his hand again. Now let's begin the second dish. The sound of swallowing saliva could be heard from the big round table. The demon emperors could not wait to see the knife falling down. One knife, another and another. It was like a death by 1,000 cuts, but it was even more cruel. Frying, cooking, stewing, the diners chewed, swallowed, and savored the taste. As the food ingredient, Qian Rongji looked at it with a smile. Come on, eat. The strong preys on the weak, that's the nature of the world. Why hide, why pretend? Who doesn't eat, who doesn't get eaten? All happiness is the joy of eating, and all pain is the pain of being eaten. The snake hissed and whispered, fanning the frenzy and pushing the banquet to its climax. White Dolphin Evil God was also shocked. This woman. Such a banquet was originally a sacrificial ceremony for him to receive more blessings from the demonic sky. However, at this moment, he realized that the blessings on her were getting stronger and stronger, while he, the main sacrifice, gained very little. The prayer that robbed his identity was a blessing. Her gaze was even more unbearable. It was as if she was looking at a pig's head that was being sacrificed. In a trance, the difference between the diner and the food blurred. It was as if she was not being eaten, but was instead feasting. She was the one being sacrificed, and they were all the sacrifices. A sense of uneasiness grew as if something was wrong. No, impossible, it must be an illusion. This is the depths of the demonic territory, my territory. Unless Imperial Emperor Jianghu comes personally, otherwise, boom. The door opened and wind and rain filled the building. The lights swayed wildly, casting a long shadow into the stormy night. White Dolphin Evil God's hand that was holding the knife trembled slightly, and the demons looked up. A man stood outside the door. He was covered in wind and rain, and his long hair fluttered in the wind like raging flames. His thick eyebrows were furrowed, and below them were 2 burning red eyes. He glanced past Qian Rongji's emaciated body, the insatiable customer, and the dazzling tableware. In the end, his gaze landed on the chef with the pig's head. These damn demon folk. Stepping over the vermilion threshold, he walked in with large strides as if he was walking into his own home. A demon emperor slammed the table, stood up, and shouted, "Stop! Who are you? How dare you barge into the Gluttony God's building?" The demon emperors immediately surrounded him. In their minds he was just a remnant of the Ming cult. Since the cult leader was at their mercy, anyone who came would be courting death. It was a good chance for them to show off in front of the Lord Evil God. The other demon emperors were also thinking the same thing. They wiped their mouths leisurely and leaned back on their high-back chairs. Those people from Ming cult really don't care about their lives. It just so happens that there's one more side dish. I can change my taste. Yeah, that woman's meat is getting sweeter and sweeter. I'm getting a little tired of it. I know, sir, I'm not doubting your culinary skills. The White Dolphin Evil God ignored all of this. He only stared at the newcomer as his heart thumped wildly. An indescribable sense of terror filled his heart. He did not feel like he was in the brightly lit gluttonous god building, surrounded by a group of powerful subordinates. Instead, he was walking alone in the dark jungle and running into a patrolling beast king. Those so-called subordinates were just a bunch of noisy crows, while he had really become a pig. Qian Rongji smiled. Sir, the tiger bone you ordered is here. It really is delicious. She licked her lips. But I want to taste you more. The white dolphin evil god tore off his apron and waved the cleaver, pointing at Li Qingshan. Kill him, kill him. The evil god's power moved, and the entire gluttonous god building came alive. The walls squirmed and oozed with blood. Huge, bloody mouths split open. He roared, "This is my restaurant, my demonic city. Only I eat people, no one else. No one can eat a single piece of my meat." With his order, the demon emperors swarmed forward. The demon emperors did not dare to be slow. They moved but mainly for show. Because from the beginning to the end, the newcomer did not reveal any aura that made them feel threatened. They did not understand why the white dolphin evil god was so angry. There seemed to be a trace of panic. The lights suddenly dimmed. The surging, pitch-black demonic energy collided in the narrow space and surged toward Li Qingshan like a raging tide. Li Qingshan suddenly opened his mouth and swallowed the surging demonic energy. He puffed out his chest and turned into a tiger demon roar. Whoa! The violent and shrill tiger roar swept through everything. The demon emperors charged forward. They did not even hear the tiger roar clearly before they were turned into dust. But this was just the beginning. He seemed to be struggling in his heart and pouring out all the stones in his chest. The demon emperor's expressions changed. They desperately activated their demon hearts and used demonic energy to defend. Some tried to demonify, using their powerful bodies to resist the attacks. But their so-called defense was as fragile as paper. Their strong demonic bodies were no different from a piece of rotten meat. The tiger roar tore everything apart and poured into their bodies. One by one, their demon hearts exploded. After going through 6 heavenly tribulations, Li Qingshan's Qilin transformation broke through several levels. His strength improved greatly. The so-called demon emperors were no match for him. It was impossible to kill them with such a simple move. If it was a normal human immortal, it was even more impossible. After all, this was the depths of the demon domain. Just the suppression of the demon domain's laws was unbearable. However, he was special. Even if he had not swallowed the Black Sun demon heart, the Qilin bloodline still flowed in his body. The demonic sky was constantly calling out to him. Especially when he was using his divine arts and spells with all his strength, he could hear the wind calling out, "My proud son, my beloved son." In just one move, the demon emperors and demon emperors were all killed. But they were not the tiger's prey. The pair of scarlet eyes stared at the white dolphin evil god. The tiger roar was also directed at him. When the tiger roar reached the sky and the demon hearts exploded, he pounced forward. How is this possible? Who are you? The white dolphin evil god couldn't believe his eyes. It was impossible for him to kill so many demon emperors with a single move. However, when he met the scarlet eyes, he felt as though he was in a nightmare. He was so frightened that he couldn't move at all. The flock of crows scattered, and the tiger hunted the pig. However, the white dolphin evil god wasn't a pig. At the moment of life and death, he waved the kitchen knife in his hand and slashed. His kitchen knife wasn't an ordinary artifact. It was a spiritual treasure bestowed by the Taotai demon god. Even a human immortal wouldn't be able to take it head-on. The white dolphin evil god hardened his heart. How dare you not hold back? Watch me cleave you into two. Right at this moment, the fierce tiger bared its fangs. An ancient bronze sword was suddenly unsheathed. The mountains, rivers, grass, trees, sun, moon, and stars were all revolving endlessly within it. The white dolphin evil god felt a chill in his heart. He didn't hesitate to keep his knife and leave, but he was too late. BFFF. Blood splattered, and the arm holding the knife flew up. Even a lion would use all its strength to capture a rabbit, let alone an evil god in the enemy's territory. But even an evil god wouldn't be a match for this all-out pounce. Chapter 1599. The clouds parted and the moon broke. The full moon was especially huge, hanging in the sky like a silver plate. It was even brighter than daytime. The demonic city shook and the tall buildings shook. The demon folk all surged onto the streets, staring at the bright moon in shock. It was truly rare to see something like this. Li Qingshan stood on the ruins, holding the ancient bronze sword in one hand and a severed arm in the other. Even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit, let alone an evil god, even if it looked like a pig. Even wild boars and tigers dared not be careless in the forest. He did not hold back at all. It was a fatal move right from the start. He knew the power of the ancient bronze sword the best. If the white dolphin had reacted slightly slower, it would be a pig's head now. Evil gods really aren't that easy to kill. He casually tossed the severed arm, but Chen Rongji caught it. Don't throw it around. This is the evil god's arm. Afterwards she bit it and sweet blood filled her mouth. Apart from the customs document, is there any other way? There is, but you should deal with this pig first. Chen Rongji buried her head in the pig trotter as she pointed at the sky. Li Qingshan followed her finger and looked over. The white dolphin evil god hovered above the moon. Its pig face was extremely vicious as it stared at Li Qingshan and the bronze sword in his hand viciously. Its face twisted, unable to hide its fear no matter how hard it tried. Were you exactly? Actually, evil gods were the same as human immortals. Their greatest strength was their understanding and usage of laws. Even if they could not control certain laws as freely as true gods and true immortals, it was enough to set them apart from regular cultivators. The evil gods were to the demon realm just like the battle god was to the Azura realm. They were blessed and protected by a world, and their battle prowess far surpassed human immortals. Even Luding Liujia and Divine General Jialan would not dare to venture deep into the demon realm alone. However, just now, the demonic sky had abandoned the true evil god, the white dolphin, in the moment they clashed. He placed all his blessings on this unknown man, even suppressing his senses. He only sensed life-threatening danger at the very last moment. Even though the will of the demon realm had always been chaotic and evil, something like this was just too unbelievable. How dare you not flee? Li Qingshan said in surprise. That sword strike just now could be considered to have determined the victor. Although the pig's head wasn't chopped off, the arm that was chopped off would never grow back. The heretic god White Dolphin noticed this as well. In the past, such injuries were nothing. In fact, it could even control its severed arm, making it even more powerful than magic treasures. But now he could not feel the existence of the severed arm at all. He could only watch helplessly as it was devoured. Chen Rongji sucked on the last bit of flesh on her little finger greedily. She sighed at the sky. It really is Sir Bai Tutu's handiwork after all. It's extremely delicious. She even let out a burp. This was not a mockery. The flesh and blood of the evil god White Dolphin had probably absorbed the essence of all living things. It indeed had a wonderful taste and power that was as deep as the ocean. She was originally all skin and bones, but after eating this pig's hand she actually became fat as if she was inflated, turning into a big fat woman. Her originally slender waist became the thickest part of her body, stretching 7 to 8 feet horizontally. Even half of her snake body was round. Furthermore, the demonic sky's favor was getting stronger, and it was confirmed that she was the main sacrifice. The heretic god White Dolphin was extremely furious. The power that he had painstakingly accumulated was at least 1/10 of his total power, but it was snatched away just like that. It was all because of this man and this strange sword. However, when he looked at the ancient greenish bronze sword, his pig eyes were filled with greed. As long as he could obtain this sword and offer it to the Taotai demon god, he would definitely be able to obtain double the compensation. He changed his mind and coughed twice. This is my demonic city. Why do I have to flee? If you don't flee, then let's fight again. Li Qingshan brandished the ancient greenish bronze sword again and felt that it was a little troublesome. He did not manage to kill this pig in one move just now, and if the pig suddenly ran around and focused on playing hide-and-seek with him, it would not be easy to kill it. If he left it alone, he might be followed again and cause countless incidents, and he would not be able to sneak into Mount Qingqi. After all, the higher the cultivation, the harder it was to kill. Even if he had the absolute advantage, it would not be easy to determine life and death. Unless he threw out another huge mountain. However, to deal with this fellow, it was not like dealing with Wuhua Ghost Immortal's sneak attack. There was a huge realm difference between them and it was really not worth it. He felt that all his cultivation had gone to waste. Wait. The heretic god White Dolphin said confidently, "You are here to serve the demon region, right?" In the history of the demon region, many worldly immortals entered the demon region to avoid reincarnation and became heretic gods. To many cultivators, all living beings were like ants, and there was no such thing as good or evil. Everything was for the sake of existence, and existence was everything. The heretic god White Dolphin thought that Li Qingshan was the same, and this was the most logical deduction. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to enter the demon region. The entire Ming cult and this woman were all chess pieces that he threw out. He used this special method to obtain the demonic sky's favor and completely turned into an heretic god. Then everything made sense. Pigs were actually not stupid and they were smarter than most animals. However, this tiger did not make sense at all. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat, but he remained calm. So what if I am? No matter what your identity was in the past, now that you are in the demon region, you have to start from scratch. I am your senior. Li Qingshan's heart did not waver and he even wanted to laugh a little. How can a pig like you be my senior? The heretic god White Dolphin said proudly, I am the first heretic god under the command of the Taotai demon god. Lord Taotai can leave anyone but me. Do you think I am qualified to be your senior? Cut the crap. You are not going to fight and you are not going to escape. What do you want? Sai, do you know that you have created a huge disaster? As long as I go to the Jianghu restaurant to complain about you. The heretic god White Dolphin wanted to bow to the sky, but he realized that he only had one arm left. He put it down awkwardly. Lord Taotai will definitely not let you go. Li Qingshan's expression changed. The Taotai demon god was panicking and there was a hint of fear in it. Chen Rongji couldn't bear to watch it anymore. His acting was too bad. The heretic god White Dolphin said patiently, as long as you give me that sword and that woman, I will let you go this time. I will even put in a good word for you in front of the Taotai demon god and let you join the Jianghu restaurant. What do you think? This woman won't do. Li Qingshan said decisively. Otherwise he wouldn't have come to save her. The heretic god White Dolphin pretended to think for a while. Alright, I will only ask for that sword. It is not for me but for you to give it to Lord Taotai as a greeting gift. Li Qingshan pretended to struggle. Alright. He handed over the ancient bronze sword with both hands, but he thought in his heart, this time I must chop off the pig's head. The heretic god White Dolphin slowly descended from the sky. A hint of pride flashed across his pig eyes, and he thought in his heart, without this sword, how can you fight with me? In their eyes, the other party was already a dead man. To be more precise, they were a dead pig and a dead tiger. Chapter 1600. Li Qingshan gripped the ancient bronze sword tightly, waiting for a lightning-quick strike to completely end this. The white dolphin descended slowly. Its evil aura expanded, blanketing the surroundings and obscuring the moon. Sensing this aura, the billions of demon folk knelt on the ground. This was the might of an evil god. It was only below the 12 demon gods and stood above trillions of lives. Qian Rongji smiled. In her eyes, it was just a pig, a wild boar that was trying its best to bluff in fear of a vicious tiger. She said to Li Qingshan, hurry up and end this. The Taotai can come at any time. She turned around and dove into the sewers with a pig bone. As long as she digested the evil god's power and completed the sacrifice, offering up the pig head to the demonic sky, the heavenly blessing she would receive would be enough for her to pave the path of evil gods. Unless Li Qingshan was defeated, she would die with him. However, this was the demon domain. Even the demonic sky probably did not care so much about the 12 demon gods. It was definitely not some evil god's home ground. The white dolphin descended in the air and suddenly stopped. Tossed the sword over. What? Li Qingshan frowned, expressing his confusion. Cut the crap. I told you to toss it, so toss it. Otherwise, I'll leave right now and go to the Jianghu restaurant to report to the Taotai demon god. The white dolphin threatened sternly, but it was clearly just a bluff. It was afraid to approach Li Qingshan too closely. If he approached where the tiger lunged at him again, he might not just lose an arm. Li Qingshan shook his head with a smile. No, you can't toss it away. The sword is extraordinary. You have to take it personally. The white dolphin said furiously, do you think I'm stupid? Heavens, have you never looked at yourself in the mirror? Li Qingshan sighed in surprise. No matter how he looked at it, it had nothing to do with cleverness. The white dolphin's face twitched. It held back its anger. I think you're still up to no good. Are you going to toss it or not? I'm not. Young man, you can only gain by giving up. You can't bear to part with a mere sword. How can the Taotai demon god tolerate you? I'm afraid that it's like throwing a meat bun to a dog, oh no, to a pig and not coming back. Since that's the case, I can only leave. The white dolphin evil god was about to leave when Li Qingshan suddenly said helplessly, alright, I'll give it to you, catch it. As he spoke, he threw the ancient greenish bronze sword into the sky with all his might. The white dolphin evil god thought that he had succeeded in his plan and suppressed the joy in his heart. Idiot, it's time for you to die. He spread his fingers and tried to grab the ancient greenish bronze sword that was flying towards him. However, his fingers passed through the sword's body. He had clearly grabbed it, but he grabbed nothing. His heart felt empty. He then looked at Li Qingshan, who was still standing where he was. He sneered and said, "You pig, you have a big head and a thick neck. Why are you acting like Zhuge Liang in front of me?" Under the watchful eyes of the evil god White Dolphin, his body fluctuated. The water mirror's image was once a great innate ability. Now that he had mastered all of the innate abilities of the spirit turtle transformation, its power had become even greater. What was real and what was fake and what was fake could all be distinguished by acquaintances. Not good. Eat my sword. A fierce bellow rang out from behind the White Dolphin evil god. It was like a tiger's roar, shaking him to the point of paralysis. A pair of scarlet eyes suddenly lit up in the air. He held the sword in one hand and the hilt in the other, drawing the sword from its sheath. However, there was no blade or flash. Even Li Qingshan's figure had vanished. A tranquil and wondrous feeling filled his heart. Only a bright moon shone through the clouds, shining down with clear light. The light condensed into a beam and landed on the huge pig's head. The world hid swords. The sun, moon, stars, mountains, rivers, grass, and trees could all be used as swords. This sword was known as the Sword of the Moon. An idea came to Li Qingshan. He struck out casually, but it naturally resonated with the laws of the demon domain, or in other words, the laws of the demon domain resonated with his will. The sword struck out like a heavenly tribulation. It was unavoidable and inescapable. He came to a realization, so this is the true power of this sword. My power is too weak. Without the cooperation of the world's will, I can't control this sword at all. It's like using a peerless divine weapon as a fire stick. I'm afraid I have to reach the realm of void refinement and Tao fusion to be able to unleash its full power. Who is that man in the bear skin? At this moment he was not even the one controlling the sword. Instead, it was the sword that triggered the laws of heaven and earth to push him. It didn't consume any of his strength. He even had the time to think about it. Even he himself would find it hard to block such a sword. In his eyes, the White Dolphin evil god was already a dead pig. The White Dolphin evil god was not willing to die just like that. It let out a shrill cry and extended two sharp tusks. Layers of black hardened tusks appeared on its back. It charged forward recklessly. This hardened tusk was its strongest defense. Ordinary treasures would not be able to harm it. Even a true immortal would not be able to take his life if his back was hit. However, the bright moon hung high in the sky. The moonlight was like water. It was endless, indestructible, and all-pervasive. The layers of hardened tusks fell off. The moonlight silently passed through the thick pig skin, seeping into his bones and soul. It was extremely cold. This sword was the Sword of Great Een. Wherever the White Dolphin evil god charged, the moonlight would shine. Regular sword techniques, no matter how grand and majestic, would always come to an end. However, this sword seemed to be endless. There was a limit to the strength of a person, but the bright moon hung high in the sky. The moonlight was inexhaustible. How could it ever come to an end? The laws of the world cycled endlessly, never stopping. Everything in the world is at my disposal. The White Dolphin evil god howled, "You forced me to do this. Come, my slaves, give me all of your strength." With that, millions of demon folk prostrated themselves on the ground, chanting his god name. In that moment, thousands of dark red pillars of light rushed into the sky. He was also a god. This was his fiefdom. The entire demonic capital was littered with thousands of temples, consecrating his statue. The power of belief that was as vast as the ocean had accumulated here. This power did not belong to him. From a certain perspective, he was only safekeeping it for the Taotai demon god. Once it was used up, it would be difficult to replenish, so he would be punished. However, in this moment of life and death, he could not care so much anymore. He mobilized all of them, ready to fight to the death against Li Qingshan. Pillars of light surged into his body and swelled up wildly, blocking the moonlight. Even his severed arm was condensed with this power. Man could triumph over nature. The power of the laws of the world could only be resisted by the human heart. The demon domain was no exception. "I'm going to kill you." "Is that so?" With a thought, Li Qingshan became as cold as the moonlight. Suddenly, he thought of the half-human, half-dragon man in the painting of the Battle of Mending the Heavens. He understood what he was feeling. All living beings were ants. There was nothing pitiful about them. He seemed to exist with the bright moon. Looking down from extremely high in the sky, the colossal demonic capital was just an ant's nest. Its existence was meaningless and nothing would happen even if he stepped over it. In the blink of an eye, the moonlight enveloping the White Dolphin god suddenly dispersed. Thousands of strands fell into the demonic capital. Between the skyscrapers, over 100,000 demon folk gathered on a main road, constantly kowtowing and praying. The moonlight swept past the path. All of the worshipping demon folk froze as if time had stopped. In the next moment they all collapsed on the ground. With a series of thuds, corpses littered the ground, completely silent. The moonlight would gather and disperse. Sometimes, a few strands would gather together and freeze the statues in the temples before dispersing afterwards, cleaning up the foundation of faith, which was the demon folk. The white dolphin god was stunned. He trembled all over. Is he planning on killing all of these demon folk? Even though he had grown accustomed to massacres, such a emotionless, cold scene of cleansing still made him shiver. He knew he was not as brutal as he imagined him to be. He raised the arm that he had just condensed, wanting to launch a counterattack, but what was he supposed to counterattack? The moon? It was still the demonic heavens. Li Qingshan had vanished, yet he was omnipresent, existing alongside the laws. Right now he was the heavens. Chapter 1601. In the depths of the pitch-black sewers, a huge snake slithered about. Its scales shone with enchanting light. The heavenly blessing poured over like a broken dam. The huge snake swelled up, shedding its scales. Even the vast sewers were almost unable to contain it. The scale of the sacrifice had completely exceeded her expectations. It was no longer just limited to the gluttony gods building. The entire great demon capital had become an altar, with billions of demon folk serving as sacrifices. Tisk, I'm just getting a share of the benefits as the main sacrificer. If he were willing to become a demon folk and accept the blessing of the demonic heavens, how difficult would becoming a demon god be? As the name suggested, the main sacrificer presided over the sacrifice, dividing up the flesh and blood, and praying for the blessings of the heavens. They were like juniors trying to please their seniors, like servants trying to flatter their masters. Children of destiny, or so-called sons of heaven in the secular world, were still sons at the end of the day. As a result, all the sons of heaven had to sacrifice themselves to the heavens throughout history. At that moment, Li Qingshan seemed to be the existence of heaven, the possessor of all the sacrifices and the recipient of the entire ceremony. However, he did not possess a demon heart, nor was he a demon folk, much less accept this blessing. He only wanted to use the laws of the world and the sword in his hand to win this battle. The white dolphin evil god was still struggling, using various methods and unleashing various innate abilities and techniques, all of which possessed the great power to move mountains and fill oceans, yet it seemed so powerless right now. His face became even more vicious, unable to disguise his terror. He stared at the sky with his pig eyes and suddenly condensed all of his power in his mouth, unleashing a dark red shockwave at the moon in the sky. He was not doing it carelessly. He found the trajectory of the laws in an attempt to interrupt the attack. He succeeded. The moonlight in the sky dimmed. As soon as he became wrapped with joy, the moonlight recovered its brightness. Cutting water with a blade would make water flow even more. Even if he could cut a river in half, how could he cut off the rotation of the sun and moon and the rotation of the seasons? Li Qingshan even moved the laws casually. The dark red shockwave rose to the limit and suddenly flipped, hurtling towards the white dolphin evil god. The power belonged to him in the first place. Now that it was drawn in by an opportunity, it was completely unavoidable. The white dolphin evil god suffered a direct hit. With a great boom it was blasted to the ground. Several hundred tall buildings were flattened by the shockwave, and a mushroom cloud rose up in the city. The white dolphin evil god vomited a mouthful of blood as one of its long fangs broke. As the saying goes, those who spit at the sky will eventually have their spit fall on their faces. The white dolphin evil god was in despair. He was like a pig that was tied to an altar. No matter how he struggled or howled, it was all useless. The source of his power, the foundation of his faith, was rapidly being destroyed. In a single moment, tens of millions of demon folk had died. Even the 2 world wars in his past life amounted to this. As time passed and the moon shifted, this number continued to rise. Whether it was man or woman, old or young, good or evil, right or wrong, everything was dictated by the heavenly Tao. However, Li Qingshan's heart did not waver at all, as if they were just numbers, just ants. Moreover, there was no need to pretend that he was punishing the evil and promoting the good, nor was there any anger or hatred. In fact, it had nothing to do with the Qilin's way of nature. He just wanted to win this battle. That was all. Li Qingshan suddenly heard a voice. It was faintly discernible and illusory. His heart stirred. That was a dragon's roar. It did not originate from the outside world. Instead, it originated from the depths of his soul, where the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine residences resided. Apart from an unknown transformation, the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine consisted of the 4 transformations and 4 demon transformations. He had comprehended 3 of them, so each had 1 transformation remaining. He had guessed what the final transformation was a long time ago. It was just a pity that he never had the opportunity to comprehend it. Perhaps it's now. Li Qingshan fished out the dragon orb he had obtained from Lin Xian and ingested it. The dragon's roar immediately became much clearer, but it was still intermittent. It was not enough for him to truly comprehend it. What am I missing? Is my cultivation insufficient? He used the trade winds the great sage of ventilation had given him again and entered the state of neither thought nor thought. This state of cultivation consumed a tremendous amount of energy. Even a human immortal would be completely drained in a short while. However, he was currently one with the world. The blessings of the demonic heavens flowed endlessly. Although he could not convert it into his own power, as it would disperse once he left this state, he could still use it like the power of faith. At that moment, the laws of the world became extremely clear. The changes of the sun and moon, the changes of the 4 seasons, everything was right before his eyes and within reach. This was already a state that was close to that of a true god or a true immortal. The only difference was that he could not truly control the laws of the world. He could only rely on the ancient greenish-bronze sword and the blessings of the demonic heavens. Although knowledge could not be converted into power directly, knowledge was the source of all power. At this moment, the white dolphin evil god had lost all will to fight. His body exploded into a mist of blood. He performed the blood escape to break through the void and teleported to the Jianghu restaurant. He even left a ruthless remark, "The demonic god will not let you off." However, Li Qingshan could clearly see how the laws of the world revolved when he performed the spell. It was not mainly based on his own power. It was more like the remote control in his previous life. With a press of a button, the signal would be transmitted and the television would change channels. To those who had never seen television, it was extremely magical. They could not understand how he did it. If this world was compared to a large television, the internal structure would be trillions of times more complicated. The so-called spell was to find the signal that could trigger it and press it gently. Li Qingshan extended a finger and cut off the signal. The white dolphin evil god's figure blurred before becoming clear again. The vicious remark was still echoing through his mind, but all that remained in his master's heart was deep fear. At this moment all the demon folk had died. All the temples had been destroyed. Only this final offering remained. Li Qingshan raised his hand again, and the moonlight in the sky gathered together. The moon was startlingly large as if it was about to fall from the sky. The white dolphin evil god collapsed. He knelt on the ground and constantly kowtowed. "Spare me, great immortal. Spare me." Li Qingshan waved his hand and moonlight fell, condensing into the edge of a sword. The pig's head fell to the ground. The sacrifice was complete, and the heavenly blessing descended. The white dolphin evil god died. He died like a regular demon folk. Under the heavens even evil gods were ants. A huge snake burst out of the ground and swallowed the pig's head and body in a single gulp. It yelled at the sky, "The Taotai will be here very soon." Li Qingshan did not seem to hear it at all. Having dealt with the white dolphin evil god, he could finally focus all of his attention on himself and listen to the dragon's cry. The dragon's cry was still extremely soft, but it rang through the miniature world in the blink of an eye. The figure of the dragon suddenly appeared, rising and changing, swimming about, but it still did not seem real. He tried desperately to grab it, but he always missed. Suddenly, he recalled the majestic painting of the Battle of Mending the Heavens again. He shifted his gaze from Goddess Nuwa and focused on the half-human, half-dragon man. If Goddess Nuwa was said to be a loving mother, then he was like a dignified father. Although he did not seem particularly fond of the human child, he did have some fondness for the dragon race. "I can also be considered as a successor of the dragon." All of these feelings merged into a wondrous feeling, which was then converted into a single statement that could be understood. The divine dragon's heavenly movements create. With that, the final divine transformation was suddenly unleashed. At that moment, the mighty dragon's cry rang through the surroundings. Li Qingshan had finally comprehended the final divine transformation, the divine dragon transformation. The technique was called the Divine Dragon Heaven Origin Way. Chapter 1602. Li Qingshan's mind was still stuck in the magnificent picture scroll of the Battle of Mending the Heavens. He stared at the half-human, half-dragon man for a long time, already knowing his identity. Saint King Fuxi. Guyun said, Fuxi's scaled body, Nua's snake body. One was half-human and half-dragon, while the other was half-human and half-snake. They were both absolute beginning gods, and at the same time they were brother and sister, husband and wife. Fuxi was both the father god and the dragon god. Chaos was Wuji, Wuji gave birth to Tai Chi gave birth to Yin and Yang gave birth to the 4 divisions. Fuxi drew the 8 trigrams, then transformed it into the 64 hexagrams, which he wrote in the Book of Changes. Among the 64 trigrams, the first one was the Qian trigram, which represented heaven. The hexagram said, Yuan Heng Li Zhen, which was the basis of all the hexagram images. Great Qian Yuan, the origin of all living things, the heavens. The birth of Qian Yuan, the beginning of all things, connected the heavenly Tao. The divine dragon heaven essence Tao embodied the true meaning within. It was the heavenly Tao that belonged to Saint King Fuxi. It was the heavenly Tao of the heavens, the god of the gods, and its essence was far above the demonic heaven. The reason why Li Qingshan was able to kill the white dolphin evil god so easily was not because he was strong enough to suppress the evil god. Instead, with the sword in his hand, he was enforcing justice on behalf of heaven, punishing on behalf of heaven. Heaven would definitely triumph over humans regardless of the myriad of living beings or the common people. Under the heavens Tao, they were all just straw dogs. After all, there was a limit to human strength, but there was a limit to the ways of the heavens. It did not exist for the good, nor did it perish for the evil. Therefore it was rare for man to conquer nature. It was normal for nature to conquer man. He knew that with his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to come into contact with the heavenly Tao, much less comprehend the divine dragon transformation. Under normal circumstances, one had to transcend 7 heavenly tribulations and completely grasp a certain great Tao before one could comprehend this divine dragon universe Tao. However, due to a fortuitous coincidence, he sacrificed billions of demon folk and an evil god, destroying demonic capital and destroying faith, completing this grand ritual of heavenly sacrifice. Only then did he successfully activate the divine dragon transformation. Unlike the initial difficulty of the Qilin transformation, the divine dragon transformation was unstoppable as soon as it was activated, and it quickly stabilized at the first level. Based on past experience, the first layer of transformations was usually very weak. However, the divine dragon transformation was an exception. It actually relied on this single level of cultivation to push the cultivation of the entire body forward. Dragon cries sounded from within the small world. An azure dragon danced about in the air. Clear energy surged, turning into the heavens. Everything was under the heavens. It was as if the entire small world had suddenly gained a backbone, and it had become vastly different. In the past, the various fiend god transformations always kept each other in check. Although they had reached a stable state now, they still needed to be controlled in the midst of intense battles. There were usually only 2 choices if one wanted to display the greatest combat power. One was to display a certain transformation, and the other was to be careful not to break the balance. But now it was completely different. No matter what kind of situation he was in, he could exert his strength to the extreme, and he didn't need to maintain balance at all. Even if it was just a single transformation, the other transformations would have to provide strong support. For example, when he used the tiger demon transformation in the past, his pocket world could only maintain a basic plane. He mainly relied on the tiger demon transformation's own strength to fight. But now, it was as if there was a monarch who could use the power of the entire country to support the expedition of the army. Even if this monarch was still very weak and couldn't completely control everything, it was far better than the previous state where everyone did their own thing. From the infeft countries to the Central Empire, his combat power skyrocketed. If I had reached this state before entering the Gluttony God building, I would have been able to chop off the white dolphin evil god's pig head with one sword. I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Moreover, just based on his own strength, the divine dragon transformation was probably the most powerful and extreme transformation among all the fiend god transformations. The way of heaven was the way of dragons. The Qian hexagram had a total of 6 lines. The early 9th, the hidden dragon is not to be used. The 9-2, the dragon is seen in the field. The 9-3, the sun is always shining. The 9-4, or leaping into the abyss. The 9-5, the dragon flies in the sky. The 9-9, the proud dragon has regrets. Together with the last line of the Qian hexagram using the 9, the dragon is not. All the lines were represented by the dragon to show the way of heaven and earth. The way of heaven was the way of dragons. It was extremely young, extremely strong, and symbolized the supreme path, rules and power. Li Qingshan had seen dragons and slain dragons in his life, but only now did he understand that these so-called dragons were all fakes, forgeries. They possessed the appearance of dragons, but they lacked the spirit of dragons. A bunch of genetically modified people. Unlike other innate gods, the bloodline of the dragon was widespread. There was a saying that the dragon had 9 sons. 9 was the extreme number, which meant that the number was vast and immeasurable. Therefore, these sons and grandsons, no matter if they were originally humans, snakes, horses, carps, or shrimps, as long as they were stimulated by the dragon's blood, they could grow 2 dragon horns, put on a body of dragon scales, and leap over the dragon's gate. They were called true dragons. The Buddhist sect even had a dragon transformation pool. No matter where one came from, as long as they rolled around in it, they could mass-produce the so-called dragons. Not to mention that the myriad sect had the true dragon scripture, which could produce such things. As the senior brother of the myriad sect, Li Qingshan had studied it before, trying to deduce the divine dragon transformation. Of course it was to no avail. Now that he thought about it, it was really funny. It was like learning how to be an emperor with a village chief's notebook. According to the life of the village chief, the emperor probably used a golden pole. Originally he thought that the spirit turtle, qilin, phoenix and other innate gods had declined, and only the dragon race had flourished. Now it seemed that it was not the case at all. I'm afraid that the dragons have also declined. How many of the dragons that were eaten by the Kunpeng were true dragons? Dragons were supposed to be the rulers of the world. But when the world fell apart, anyone dared to call themselves kings and emperors, pretending to be true dragons. Dragons could be big or small, they could rise or hide. When they were big, they could breathe out mist. When they were small, they could hide. When they rose, they could soar in the universe, and when they hid, they could hide in the waves. Dragons could be compared to the heroes of the world. Among the heroes of the world, only the envoy and Chao Heir could be called dragons. Among the people of the 3 kingdoms, only Chao Mingda and Lu Xuanda could be called dragons. In the end, they could not unite the world. They could only leap in the abyss, but not fly in the sky. And Li Qingshan's divine dragon transformation had just reached the first level, and there were already signs of a breakthrough. It was so powerful, but it was so easy to cultivate. He thought for a while and suddenly understood, so I have been cultivating this divine dragon transformation since many years ago. Along the way he had been determined to go to the 9 heavens. He had experienced wind, frost, rain and snow, experienced many dangers and defeated many strong enemies. The heavens were vigorous and so was the gentleman. This journey to the 9 heavens was the journey of the divine dragon. He had already mastered the spirit of the dragon. If it was in accordance with his temperament, it was far above all the divine transformation and not inferior to the various devil transformation. The reason why he had not comprehended it was because the time was not yet right. Now that it is late spring, the dragon rides the time and changes, like a man who has achieved his ambitions and roams the 4 seas. 9-2 I see the dragon in the field. I wonder when I will be able to soar in the sky. 8. Chapter 1603. Li Qingshan sheathed his sword and immediately broke free from the state of being one with the world. Under the illumination of the bright moon, he slowly descended from the sky, landing on the rooftop of a tall building. Sure enough, with my current cultivation, even if I comprehend the divine dragon transformation and am blessed by the demonic sky, it's still not enough for me to grasp the ways. I'll need to undergo the 7th heavenly tribulation at the very least and reach the realm of refining the spirit to return to the void. And if I want to reach the 9th layer of the divine dragon cosmic path, even true gods and true immortals aren't enough. I need to undergo the 8th heavenly tribulation and reach the supreme realm of merging with the void and becoming a great saint. At the thought of this, he looked at the sword in his hand in astonishment. The prowess of this sword was far too powerful. Even the 3 mountains that the mountain-moving sage had given him could not compare to it, much less an ordinary treasure. Perhaps only the mountain-moving token could compare to it. Furthermore, he had a faint feeling that the ancient greenish bronze sword was stronger. Just who is that man in bearskin? And what is the Xiong clan? He even said he wanted to bestow the entire world to me, but who has the right to do that? Suddenly he raised his head and gazed into the depths of the sky, passing through the deep and distant demonic sky and reaching beyond the 9 heavens. He had once found the man indescribable, but now that he had comprehended the divine dragon transformation, he suddenly discovered that the man was not just a divine dragon whose tail could not be seen, but a dragon that could soar through the sky. Is he a friend? Or an enemy? He shook his head and decided not to think about this for now. He made his way to the edge of the building. The rain had already stopped, and the whistling night wind carried with it the aura of death. The demonic city had become deathly silent. Corpses filled the streets and alleys, men, women, old and young. The corpses rapidly decayed. A flock of crows had appeared out of nowhere, blotting out the sky and earth as they cawed and squawked at the corpses. Suddenly he felt like it was not a city beneath his feet but a graveyard. The buildings were like tombstones, standing alone as they spoke of the passing that no one cared about. Suddenly the night wind seemed to blow into his chest and his heart trembled. At that moment he was no longer the heavens, and these demon folk were no longer numbers. At the very least they were still alive in the previous moment. All sorts of feelings, bit by bit, converged into a great river, transforming into an indescribable vibration that battered his mind, causing him to waver slightly. The heavenly Tao was heartless, but he was still human. They're just some damn demon folk. Did they really deserve to die? Did the benevolent demon folk deserve to die too? Did the pregnant demon folk deserve to die too? Did the little demon folk in her stomach deserve to die too? Li Qingshan closed his eyes. He was unable to answer these questions. He took a deep breath and tried to regain his resolution. He threw all his thoughts to the back of his mind and turned to ask, "Where are we going?" A colorful snake broke out of the ground and coiled around the building. Its head extended to the rooftop and hissed as it flicked its tongue. Qian Rongji sensed the change in him, but didn't say anything. She only said, "If you can't clear this stage, there's only one way left. Where do you want to go?" Suddenly, a voice resounded through the sky. It was dignified, icy cold, vast, and filled the world with divine might. Caw. The crows took to the sky with a flutter, circling around the tall buildings madly as they cried out, but they were afraid to fly any higher into the sky. Whoosh! The fierce wind kicked up Li Qingshan's hair. The wind and clouds surged in the sky, obscuring the moon and enveloping the demonic capital in a single moment. A face vaguely appeared in the depths of the demonic clouds. It was expressionless, like the Taotai markings on the bronze cauldron. It outlined a cold, eerie beast's face with the simplest of lines, staring at Li Qingshan without moving at all. It made him recall the feeling he had when he faced the Sangharama god. The Taotai demon god. Qian Rongji immediately shrunk back underground. Li Qingshan's expression was the same as usual. Everything was within his expectations. Under the state of being one with the world, he understood that fleeing was useless. The entire Taotai demon world was the Taotai demon god's territory. The Taotai was the true heaven. Its will was everywhere, able to descend anywhere at any time. It was useless even if he fled thousands of kilometers away. If he wanted to leave, he had to fight and defeat the Taotai demon god's will. Only then would he have a chance at escaping. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that only the Taotai demon god's will had descended, not his actual body. Otherwise he would basically be dead for sure. However, this was also because the Taotai demon god was confident enough to suppress everything with its will. Whether it was evil gods or human immortals, none of them could put up any resistance. It was still a situation where he had a slim chance of survival. At this moment, the beast face in the sky suddenly sprang to life. It did not fly into a rage and immediately attack Li Qingshan. Instead, it asked with interest, "Did you do all of this?" "Yes." Li Qingshan answered calmly. There was no point in lying to a true god. However, he silently stowed the ancient bronze sword behind him. Fortunately, the divine sword was self-concealing, so it seemed like a regular bronze sword. It gave off no aura at all. He gripped the hilt firmly, ready to draw it at any time and fight to the death against the Taotai. "I have to say I'm very curious. How did you do it?" An evil god and billions of demon folk, and he had even mobilized all the power of faith before he died, yet he still died. "I killed him," Li Qingshan said firmly. He would never expose what he had done. "Good, very good." The Taotai demon god seemed to be very satisfied with this answer. "Though you killed my chef. I'm lacking a chef right now." Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. He's trying to recruit me. So he also thinks I've come to become an evil god. After all, this was the most logical deduction. Otherwise, why would a human immortal come to the territory of a demon god for no reason? Was he looking to die? In this chaotic and evil demon domain, there was no such thing as friendship. In the Taotai demon god's opinion, since an evil god had died, all he had to do was replace it with a stronger one. It was just the law of the jungle. As for the demon folk, they were like weeds. There was no end to them no matter what, so there was no need for him to worry about them. Or, you can become a dish. You have no other choice. The Taoya's beast face sank a little more. Its divine might was like a prison, and its pressure was unstoppable. Of course I understand. Li Qingshan changed his mind. My target is Qingqi Mountain. It's meaningless to fight with this Taotai. As long as I can get through this, I'll take care of the customs clearance documents. When I get rid of Cheongqi, you can't do anything to me. It's hard to say who will be my dish. Okay, I'll consider it. But I don't know how to cook. That's not a problem. Tell me your surname, name. Li Qingshan. He couldn't lie in front of a true god. It was meaningless to hide his identity. So he just told the truth. Wait. Li Qingshan. You are Li Qingshan. The one who was chosen by the leader? Li Qingshan said in surprise. Leader? You mean Brother Niu? The Taotai demon god confirmed it immediately. He said, I'm from the Jinyun clan. I'm a descendant of the Yen Emperor. We both belong to the Divine Farmer clan. Ha ha, little brat, I order you to come to the Jinyun dining hall immediately. I'll treat you to a feast. His tone was full of joy. He didn't look cold or dignified like a demon god at all. He sounded more like a friendly senior who was inviting a junior to come to his home for dinner. His beast face even showed a similar smile. Li Qingshan was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. If he didn't know Taotai had no reason to fool him, he would have suspected this was a trap. He didn't know what the Jinyun clan was. But the words Yen Emperor and Shinong clan had revealed all the answers. Also, who was Brother Niu? Chapter 1604. Shinong used the ox as his totem, and everyone knew the story of Shinong tasting all kinds of herbs. Shinong was worshipped as Shinong because he understood farming, and he also understood medicine. It was said that Shinong had a very strange appearance. He was an ox in a human body. Except for his head and limbs, his whole body was transparent. His internal organs would turn black when he consumed poisonous herbs. In the end, he died because he tasted all kinds of herbs and accumulated too much poison. Even though Li Qingshan wasn't a scholar in his previous life, he was familiar with these illusions. He suppressed his eagerness and asked the Taotai in the sky, Is Brother Ox Shinong? The Taotai laughed. How could it be? Shinong was one of the first humans created by Lady Niuwa, and he was our ancestor. Because he was proficient in agriculture and medicine and made humanity flourish, he was worshipped as a leader and founded the Divine Farmer clan. Flame Emperor is the title of leader. He is the leader of both Shinong and the leader of the human clan. Brother Ox is the Flame Emperor and the Flame Emperor is Brother Ox. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and tried to digest this information. But it didn't matter. They were all ancestors. At this moment he felt like he had returned to his ancestral home. He held his comrade's hand excitedly. He had finally found an organization. He thought he was a traitor, but he didn't expect that according to the Taotai, they were the Orthodox clan. But who was Brother Ox's enemy? If Shinong represented the human clan, then the enemy was the dragon clan, continuing the pattern of the sky-mending war. The man in the bear's skin really had the aura of a real dragon flying in the sky. Or taking it a step further, it was the famous Battle of Zhuolu, where a great demon king named Qiyu existed. Lord Taotai, is our enemy the dragon clan or Qiyu? When it heard the two words Qiyu, the Taoya's face suddenly revealed an enraged expression, and it sighed again. Alas, you really don't know anything. There are only a few real dragons left, and those on the table are only worthy of having their liver and marrow sucked out to go with wine. As for Qiyu, could it be that my real name is Taotai? Li Qingshan was slightly startled. You said your surname is Jiang. As for Taotai, it doesn't sound like a good thing. Similar to the names of Baian and Xiongqi, it was more like a bad title, such as Ghost King, Fierce King, Spirit King and so on. The Taotai said angrily, there's no need to say too much about the Qi. He's just stupid and ignorant. The word you was the most detestable. When Sangjie created the characters, it was even. When everyone got the same amount of food, it was more. When one person had 2 portions of food, and especially, when one person had more than 1 portion of food. One person monopolizing multiple portions of food. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. He was used to seeing all kinds of evil in the world, so he didn't understand what was so hateful about it. You don't understand. In our Divine Farmer clan, everyone is equal and everything is owned by the public. Only then could they unite as one and endure hardships to open up the mountains and forests. Generations of leaders had to overcome all obstacles, not caring about their own lives. Only then did humanity flourish. But all of this was usurped by that damn. The Taoya's face in the sky suddenly became ferocious, but it didn't say that name in the end as if it was afraid of it. Li Qingshan immediately understood that the bad title, Qi Yu, was more important than Tao Tai, or Qiong Qi. It was different from the current strict hierarchy of humanity, where monarchs and ministers were used to it. In those ancient times the human race was still very weak. Everyone is equal and everything is owned by the public, was the most basic and sacred principle. If a leader of a clan was not only stupid, but also unjust, he didn't deserve to be a leader, and he was simply unworthy of being a leader. If the name Qi Yu was translated in the language of the later generations, it would be an immoral and ignorant ruler. If a leader of a clan used Qi Yu as a title, that person would be really stupid. But why is the Tao Tai so angry? Wait, could it be? He suddenly had a crazy idea. The legendary Qi Yu also had a bronze head and iron forehead, a bull's body and a bull's totem. In the same era, the divine farmer clan wouldn't have two leaders. The bull totem, Emperor Yen, unfair accusations, usurpation, Qi Yu, the enemy of the East, that earth-shattering battle of Zhuolu, was probably not as great and righteous as the legend said. At some point, the demonic clouds dispersed, and the bright moon shone brightly. Under the firmament at the top of the demonic city, a man and a god, a question and an answer. It was like the heavens' questions written by the descendant of the High Sun clan. Through countless years of history, the same bloodline and totem connected them again. They listened to the horn from ancient times, leading to the destined battlefield. Come to the Jin Yun restaurant. I will tell you everything. Here, no one can touch a single hair of yours. The Tao Tai face in the sky became gentle again, like a promise from a senior to a junior on the battlefield, using his body as a shield and blood as an oath. For the clan, for the people. Li Qingshan already believed it. Once he entered the Tao Tai demon god's cave abode, he would be like a fish on the chopping board facing the Tao Tai demon god himself, waiting to be slaughtered. One last question. Why don't the other demon gods know me? I've seen Tao Wu and Qiong Qi. I even have a grudge with Qiong Qi. The unfilial son of the Xiaohao clan is not one of us. He naturally wouldn't know such a secret. At least he has some judgment and didn't dare to touch you. Otherwise, I would definitely not let him go. Don't worry, no matter what grudge it is, I will help you settle it. Li Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief, no longer hesitating. Even though the Tao Tai was a notorious demon god, if he couldn't even trust his own people, who else was worth trusting? Sorry I killed your... Li Qingshan shrugged. Chef. He couldn't help but let go of the sword hilt and put down the ancient greenish bronze sword hidden behind him. It's just a pig that I'm rearing. It's good for you to practice. Seeing that you have such strength, I'm relieved. The Tao Tai face suddenly frowned. That sword is... Li Qingshan naturally told it honestly. It was given to me by a man wearing a bear skin. He has the aura of a true dragon on him. He called himself the Yu Xiong family. Yu Xiong family? What did he say to you? He said that he would give me the land as a reward, and even invited me to join his tribe. You accepted? The voice in the sky gradually became dull. The Tao Tai face became expressionless again. The demonic clouds that retreated began to gather densely again. It became more and more gloomy. This. Li Qingshan hesitated for a moment and didn't answer. He felt that something was wrong. Yu Xiong family? Yu Xiong family. Why did it sound so familiar? He seemed to have heard it somewhere before. Just now, he heard a lot of legends about ancient clans and was inspired. Even the ancient greenish bronze sword in his hand became more and more familiar. Boom. There was a sudden clap of thunder and blood rained down from the sky. The Taoya's beast face laughed again, every single line of his laughter trembling. His hysterical emotions gradually overflowed, filled with pain, hatred, and fury. So, you're also a traitor. Chapter 1605. The demonic clouds were like the sea, suddenly surging. Blood rain poured down, covering the sky and covering the earth. Li Qingshan's spirit was agitated, the word traitor seemed to explode in his heart. The magnificent divine power pressed down like a solid substance. In a flash, the face of Tao Tai filled his eyes, the ferocious expression contained great terror and majesty, fiercely attacking his mind. He was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, unable to resist at all. It was so close. The corner of the mouth with protruding fangs suddenly split open all the way to the ears, forming a huge abyss-like mouth. That kind of momentum, rather than saying that it wanted to swallow him, it was better to say that he was being sucked in. This scene was so similar to the scene when he killed the white dolphin evil god, but this time he was the prey. At the critical moment, with a clang, the long sword was unsheathed, the sword light illuminated the darkness, cutting off the suffocating divine power, and resolutely chopped towards the huge abyss-like mouth. Time seemed to stop. Li Qingshan did not look at the face of Cao Tai, but at the ancient bronze sword in his hand, only to see the blade slowly swaying the sky full of blood rain, changing a strange color, engraved with mountains, rivers, grass and trees, and the other with the sun, moon and stars. Suddenly he understood the true meaning contained in it. Mountains, rivers, grass and trees represented the earth. The sun, moon and stars represented the sky. With a sword in hand, it was the master of heaven and earth. This was the legendary sword of the divine path, Shenyuan sword. Boom. The face of Cao Tai swallowed half of the building, adding a sword mark on its face, and became even more furious. Traitor! 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 Li Qingshan fell rapidly, smashing through several dozen floors in a row. Rumbles rang out as if he had been struck several dozen times before slamming heavily into the thick foundation of the building. Only then did he stop his descent. Suddenly he vomited a mouthful of blood. All of his organs had ruptured. The aftermath spread under his body, and the solid foundation could not bear the huge impact. The remaining half of the building collapsed instantly, burying him under thousands of tons of soil and stones. In the dark underground, a pair of red eyes flashed, sighing and excited. So that's how it is. If Brother Niu was Yendi and was disdainfully called Chiyu. The man in the bear skin was Yellow Emperor, originally belonging to the Yuxiong family, later called the Shenyuan family, a branch and transformation of the Shenong family. He never thought that he would be in the aftermath of the Battle of Zhuolu after witnessing the magnificent battlefield of the Sky-Mending War. No wonder Cao Tai suddenly became furious. If he was not mistaken, it was the Yellow Emperor who banished him to the infernal realm. He was the man who wore a bear skin and held a bow and arrow. He said that he wanted to hunt bulls, and he was the original owner of the ancient bronze sword. The raging ox that was Li Qingshan had barged into the 18 layers of hell and caused quite the disturbance. He had even drawn over a king of Yama, so the heavens would definitely hear about it. But for some reason not only did he not kill him, but he even invited him to join the Yuxiong clan. He even gave him the Shenyuan sword as a keepsake and gave him the land as a reward. He accepted all of this. Although it was all unintentional, being called a traitor really was not wrong at all. He smiled in a self-deprecating manner. Li Qingshan, oh Li Qingshan. I didn't think a thick-browed, big-eyed person like you would betray the revolution too. At the same time, a demon folk corpse flew up, flying towards the huge, abyssal mouth. Over 100 million demon folk corpses surged into the sky like the tide, being devoured by the Taoye's beast face in a single gulp. It turned into a body and grew limbs. With a boom, a huge black foot descended, flattening a tall building. A figure that was thousands of feet tall stood between heaven and earth, wearing a bronze mask on his face. It was the beast face of Cao Tai. Get your ass out here. A huge claw plunged into the depths of the ground, right where Li Qingshan was. It crushed all the earth and rock in its hand, instantly crushing it to pieces. The moment the 5 fingers closed, Li Qingshan rushed into the air and bellowed, "Shut up! I'm not a traitor. You still dare to quibble?" The Cao Tai gripped the earth and rock in its hand firmly, swinging its arm and hurling it as hard as it could. The mountainous boulder immediately broke through the air barrier and burst into flames like a comet. With a long tail of flames, it hurtled towards Li Qingshan at an unbelievable speed. Li Qingshan made up his mind. Instead of retreating, he advanced, unleashing the strength of the ox demon and throwing out a punch. Boom! The boulder shattered. Some of it flew into the sky, while others shot towards the demonic city, piercing over a dozen buildings. It burst into flames before slowly collapsing and kicking up a cloud of dust. Li Qingshan stood with his hands behind his back and stared at the giant in the sky. He said calmly, "Everything isn't as you imagine. If I really were a traitor, why would I have come here to throw myself into a trap?" The arm that had shattered the boulder retracted behind him. Even when he clenched it firmly with his other hand, it still trembled uncontrollably. The bones inside had shattered like the boulder. This was a demon god after all. Even though it was just a clone, its strength far exceeded his. The difference between the heavens and the earth was not something that a single Shenyuan sword could make up for. If he couldn't convince the Cao Tai demon god today, it would be a tough battle. "Who knows what you're up to?" The Cao Tai demon god growled but didn't continue to attack. Just now, Li Qingshan's grace reminded him of leader. After all, Li Qingshan was the one chosen by leader. However, it could also be an illusion. Even if he didn't want to admit it, the man who exiled him here also had the same grace. Conspiracy? Li Qingshan laughed and said calmly, "That's not my specialty. How can I win your trust, senior? Put down that sword and follow me back to the Jinyan restaurant. Otherwise I'll crush your bones and shatter your soul." "I'm sorry, but I can't agree to either of these things." Li Qingshan shook his head. They were enemies in the first place. The Taotai had suddenly become friendly only because he viewed him as a clansman. Now that his identity was being questioned, and he was even suspected of being a traitor, all of his friendliness had vanished. Under these circumstances, it was impossible for him to put down his weapon and allow himself to be trampled upon just to win the Taotai demon god's trust. He could not place his safety completely on the Taotai demon god's mood. "Moreover, I hate it when people threaten me the most. Then only death awaits you." The Taotai demon god waved his hand, and several hundred buildings behind him collapsed. Countless pieces of steel were pulled out, twisting and condensing into a short spear in his hand. He raised the short spear and arched his back, bending his knees slightly. His colossal body actually seemed extremely light. All of his aura and might were withdrawn, and even his anger and hatred seemed to vanish. Behind the bronze mask, a pair of dark eyes stared at Li Qingshan quietly. This was his most ancient and most primitive form of battle. Li Qingshan could not help but hold his breath. He felt threatened like never before. The spirit turtle foretold a fate of death, requesting him to avoid this battle. However, the dragon that had just woken up produced a series of roars. He was in high spirits, urging him to go against the flow. The tiger demon had already become impatient a long time ago. He roared out, thirsting for battle and slaughter. He would rather be destroyed than yield. As a result, he sucked in a deep breath and pointed his sword at the Taotai. "Then come." Chapter 1606. Above Demonic City, humans and gods were confronting each other. Before Li Qingshan could finish his sentence, the Taotai snorted coldly, and the short spear that was formed from millions of tons of twisted steel suddenly disappeared. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat, and he stopped abruptly. There was a small hole in it and it was pierced by something. It was a murderous aura, a wisp of murderous aura that was as thin as a gossamer. The small world circulation instantly became sluggish, and the powerful aura that was gathered just now collapsed. He was shocked. "I didn't expect murderous aura to be used like this." As the master of the Taotai demon world, a true god that controlled the laws, even if the strength of the incarnation was only comparable to that of an evil god, its movements contained the laws, and it was enough to crush any immortal or evil god. Before they even started fighting, Li Qingshan was already at a disadvantage. If he still dared to fight head-on, he would immediately be crushed by the short spear that followed. He could only retreat. He flapped his wings of wind and retreated hastily without caring about anything. However, he was like a grasshopper on a rope, firmly bound by that wisp of murderous aura, and he could not break free no matter what. Although he could not see the disappearing short spear, he could clearly feel that the short spear was like the movement of a celestial body, approaching him along this trajectory. The moment it appeared again, it would be the moment of his death. Even if he had the nirvana of the phoenix, how many times could he withstand the spear? Or perhaps he could use up the number of rebirths in one strike. This is the power of a demon god. Just a mere incarnation is already so powerful. This is really interesting. Li Qingshan took a deep breath, and with a mighty dragon roar, he forcefully pushed the small world to circulate. He waved the Shenyuan sword in his hand, and cut off that wisp of murderous aura and the laws contained within. The short spear appeared out of nowhere, and it was already very close. At first, the tip of the spear was like a black eye, staring at Li Qingshan's chest. In the blink of an eye, it became a black wall and its complete shape could not be seen at all. It rumbled as it pressed down. In front of him was still death. His expression changed and it became terrifying and hideous. It was filled with the will of great destruction, and even his skin turned indigo. His fingertips slid down from his forehead, and he suddenly opened his third eye. Billowing black flames condensed into a beam and shot out. Break! Li Qingshan did not take a step back. Instead, he raised his eyebrows and moved forward. The black city wall continued to press down, but it continued to collapse, unable to get any closer to him. These flames had once burned down Azura's indestructible three-link city, so this short spear made of ordinary steel was nothing to them. World-extinguishing divine fire. The Taotai sneered slightly, and the tip of the spear was immediately burned off. The black flames were still burning up along the spear. He injected some divine power into the spear and extinguished the flames. However, this attack also failed. After all, this wasn't his true weapon, or else it wouldn't have been destroyed so quickly. It was more than enough to crush Li Qingshan. Boom. Although the attack missed, the aftermath still caused countless buildings to collapse, and huge debris flew all over the sky. Li Qingshan stood on a piece of wreckage. It was the upper part of a tall building that had been cut in half, but he didn't take advantage of the situation to launch a counterattack. The world-extinguishing divine flame was extremely powerful, but it also consumed a lot of energy. Even with a small world as a foundation, it wouldn't be able to last for long. The most important thing was that he couldn't give the Taotai a fatal blow. The Taoya's body was really too huge. He could destroy one of his hands or one of his legs, but he would be killed by the following attack. There were flaws everywhere, but there were no flaws at all. Moreover, destroying his entire body wouldn't be of any use. The most important thing was that bronze mask. However, under the scan of the divine eye, the bronze mask didn't have any flaws. There wasn't even a node that could be destroyed. Of course, it wasn't that there really wasn't any, it was just that he couldn't see it. Is that all you've got? The Taoya's cold voice came from behind the bronze mask. Ever since he condensed his incarnation, this mask didn't have any expression. It's not too late if you surrender now. I admit it, Li Qingshan said calmly. I'm not your opponent, even if it's just an incarnation. This kind of real difference in power wasn't something that could be made up for by spiritual willpower. He used all his strength, but it was nothing more than blocking a normal attack. In a fight of magical powers, it wasn't about spells but the application of laws. Just now, when he was killing the white dolphin evil god, Emotion was on his side. But now Emotion was on Taotai's side. Unless he swallowed that black sun devil heart. However, just as this thought rose, he dispelled it. It's good that you understand. I'm willing to believe that you didn't betray the Flame Emperor. So don't resist pointlessly. Put down that sword and follow me back to the Jinyin dining hall. No, you're wrong. Perhaps I'm really your so-called traitor? Li Qingshan smiled. He joined the Wuxia clan just to get some wine to drink. Since the wine tasted great, there was nothing to regret. As for what others wanted to say, it was their business. He shook his head and said, I don't know any Flame Emperor and I won't fight for him. The one I know is only Big Brother Bull. They are the same person. No, it's not the same. Senior, I'm different from you. I don't have a leader and I'm not loyal to anyone. Big Brother Bull once said to me, don't lower your head to anyone because you used to ride on my back. Taotai was shocked, and an indescribable feeling welled up in his heart. But he believed it at once. This is what the leader would do and this is what the leader would say. This Li Qingshan was the one chosen by the leader. The bronze mask was also moved. However, all kinds of past experiences made his heart cold. He revealed a bleak smile. Do you think that by saying this you can make me let you go? We've experienced too many betrayals and every time it's guys like you. Starting from that bastard of the Wuxia clan, then that stone monkey and now you. Which one of us doesn't have the hope of the leader? Which one of us doesn't have the grace of the leader? But you guys are born to be rebellious. You only do things according to your own will and you never know what loyalty is. Li Qingshan touched the back of his head, speechless. Taotai said resolutely, I can't do it again and again but not again and again. Instead of pinning my hope on guys like you, it's better to give up this idea. I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to surrender or not? Li Qingshan said meaningfully, this world has changed you but I'm not begging you to let me go. But I'm not begging you to let me go. I just want to say that I'm sorry. Although it's a little unfair, this is all I can do. With a gentle step, half of the tall building beneath his feet shattered loudly. He had already lunged towards the Taotai. You're seeking your own death. The Taotai was unfazed. He spread his fingers and slammed his palm over, like a dark cloud enveloping him. He widened his eyes and scanned through the dark cloud, finding a node that he could destroy. The apocalyptic flames immediately activated, and a black streak of light immediately pierced the center of his palm. It followed a certain trajectory, gathering and dispersing as it drifted about. Boom. Half of the Taoya's arm was ripped to pieces. Millions of demon folk corpses fell down, but he did not care at all. His other hand reached towards Li Qingshan again. Li Qingshan was already unable to destroy it in time, but it was enough for him to approach the Taoye's bronze mask. He suddenly pulled out the mountain-moving tablet. Mountain come. He smashed the last of the three mountains, the skyscraper ridge, viciously against the Taoye's face. Chapter 1607. Thump. The world shook like a huge bell had been struck. Waves of sound spread out in all directions, sweeping away the thick, demonic clouds. A bright moon hung in the sky again. Under the moon, Li Qingshan wielded a sword in one hand and a tablet in the other, soaring through the air like a dragon. His clothes were like a flag and his scarlet hair danced like fire. Crack. The bronze mask cracked, and the colossal Taoye's clone over 3,000 meters away suddenly staggered and fell backwards. He was filled with disbelief. This is the mountain-moving sages. Mountain-moving tablet. In a daze he saw a lion gazing at him from above. He was no stranger to the majestic figure. The skyscraping ridge had always been a part of the foolish old man's body. It contained one of the 3,000 ways, suppressing both the Taoye's clone and the laws it controlled. I haven't lost yet. The Taotai roared out and suddenly took a step back with his right foot. Several tall buildings collapsed and he forcefully supported his body. He reached towards the skyscraping ridge with his single arm. The divine dragon heavenly works creation. Li Qingshan raised the Shenyuan sword high into the air and pointed it at the bright moon. In that moment he and the sword and the moon, the sky and the man merged. The bright moon suddenly lit up, enlarging as if it was about to fall from the sky. The figure of a dragon swam within it. While the Taotai was suppressed by the mountain, Li Qingshan gained the upper hand in terms of the laws of the world once again. The moonlight condensed into a beam, shining on the Taoye's arm. The Taotai gripped the skyscraping ridge firmly, wanting to move it away from his face, but his arm gradually cracked. The demon folk corpses fell down. Finally, with a boom it fell to pieces. Corpses rained down. The skyscraping ridge pressed down heavily. The bronze mask twisted and deformed, already covered in cracks. With a thought from Li Qingshan, the moonlight shifted as well, shining on the Taoye's right leg that supported his body. Boom. The right leg collapsed as well and the Taotai collapsed on its back. Li Qingshan sheathed his sword and descended from above. The figure of a dragon flew through the air and landed on the skyscraping ridge, gently stepping on the top of the mountain. Boom. The skyscraping ridge shook violently, pressing down even faster. Finally, it crushed the Taotai to the ground like it was nothing. Boom. The bronze mask cracked, and the enormous incarnation disintegrated. Waves of earth surged outwards and smoke and dust rushed into the horizon. The great earthquake destroyed all of the buildings on the ground, and a precipitous mountain appeared. Li Qingshan stood at the peak of the mountain, but there was not a hint of complacency on his face. This skyscraping ridge was the tallest and steepest of the three mountains. It was originally reserved for Cheongqi, but now that it was used, it would have one less ultimate move. However, at the juncture of life and death he couldn't care so much anymore. In any case, the most important thing to topple Qingqi Mountain was the mountain shifting token itself. It was not necessary to use the three mountains. And the most important thing was that what was defeated now was just an incarnation of Taotai. He probably thought that his incarnation was enough to crush everything, but he did not expect that Li Qingshan still had such a trick up his sleeve. The true Taotai will descend at any moment. I must leave this place as soon as possible. I must leave the Taotai demonic world. Li Qingshan opened his palm and raised it slightly, activating the earth force field. Thousands of tons of rocks floated up from the ruins, and a giant snake emerged from the depths of the ground. It was Chen Rongji. You lead the way, let's go. All right. Chen Rongji turned around and turned into a tiny snake. With a swish, she wrapped around Li Qingshan's wrist and pointed with her head. Li Qingshan unfurled his wings of wind and flapped them as hard as he could. Waves of air swept out, tearing through the dust and whistling off. In the blink of an eye, he had traveled over 1,000 kilometers. Glancing back, the demonic city had already been reduced to ruins, a cemetery. This was a war between gods. It would definitely involve millions of lives and cause endless destruction. But right now, he might not even be able to protect his own life, so he could not afford to be sad. Not to mention they were just demon folk. At the same time, in the Jinyan restaurant, a skinny figure sat in front of the ox totem alone. Torches blazed around him, but they were unable to burn through the thick darkness around him. He wore a bronze mask which happened to be the Taoye's beast mask. Under the flickering firelight and the thick darkness, it seemed particularly vicious and terrifying. Li Qingshan. He slowly removed the mask with his pale white hands, revealing a face that was just as pale. His slender eyebrows drooped to the sides, and his eyes were filled with melancholy and exhaustion. He stared at the ox totem on the wall. He murmured, "Even I have been changed." If it were in the past, he definitely would have followed his leader's will unconditionally and believed in his leader's judgment, but now he wanted to kill the person the leader had chosen. He covered his face with his hands. The anger, pain, and hatred were so intense that he struggled to suppress it. Even the great sage of the moving mountain would gradually lose his memories when he was sealed in ruin's end. How could he remain unaffected after being exiled to this chaotic, twisted demon domain? I hope the leader hasn't made a mistake this time. This war had already gone on for far too long, so long that even the gods felt pained. Li Qingshan sensed something, but the Taotai did not pursue him. Perhaps it had been roused by the mountain and realized they were not enemies. By now, he had already followed the direction Chen Rongji had pointed in and arrived at the boundary of the Taotai demon world. He tried and found that no matter how fast he sped up, the horizon remained the same, hanging far away in the sky. The undulating mountains below were the limits that couldn't be crossed. Chen Rongji pointed at the mountains and said, "Go to that canyon." Li Qingshan followed her instructions and arrived at the canyon. There were two large mountains on the left and right side, and they met at the end of the canyon. There was a long and narrow crack in the depths of the canyon. It was layered, long and deep, but it was not formed by rocks. Instead, it was formed by bright red flesh that was squirming continuously. It made Li Qingshan feel disgusted. However, in the demon domain he had seen too many disgusting things and was almost numb to it. Thus, he raised his wrist and asked, "Can I reach the Qiongqi demon world by passing through there?" The little snake on his wrist was cold and slippery. It hissed and flicked its tongue. "That's right. However, don't be too careless. That is the blood maze of the evil god Jianghu. Be careful not to be trapped in there forever." The evil god Jianghu? Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows in disdain. He had fought a demon god before. Although it was only an incarnation, he did not take the evil god seriously. After comprehending the divine dragon transformation, and with the Shenyuan sword in hand, he could kill any evil god. Hiss, don't treat her like the evil god Baidu. Jianghu is also an ancient god. She has resided in the infernal domain for a longer period of time than a few of the demon gods. She is also known as the Jiao Ghost Mother. She has 9 evil gods under her command, and they are all her children. Even the demon gods have to show her some respect. However, she is not loyal to any demon god. Her abode does not belong to the 12 demon realms. Instead, it is a world of its own. There are 12 exits that can connect to the 12 demon realms. If not for the fact that the demon domain can only accommodate 12 demon gods, she would definitely be a demon god. Li Qingshan's heart sank. Even if she was not a real demon god, as long as she had the strength of the incarnation of Taotai, it would be difficult for him to deal with her. The Jiao Ghost Mother, who was close to a demon god, and the 9 evil gods, who knew how dangerous this blood maze was. He said meaningfully, "You seem to know this place very well." "Of course. If I can't pass through smoothly, this blood maze is the only way." The Chen Rongji's snake eyes rolled. "However, as long as you swallow the Black Sun demon heart, she probably won't be a match for you." Its mysterious voice was full of temptation. Chapter 1608. Chen Rongji coiled around Li Qingshan's wrist, hissing and flicking its forked tongue. His timing was impeccable. Even the most ferocious tiger would be exhausted. He had gone through a desperate battle where corpses piled up in the decaying city, and the grotesque legends of the ancient times. During the final battle, Li Qingshan was naturally brave and fearless, disregarding life and death. Now that he had broken out of the encirclement and escaped the desperate situation, he felt a different kind of feeling. When Chen Rongji represented the infernal domain and extended another invitation, he did not reject it. Instead, he looked up. The bright moon had already set, and the demonic sky was deep and lofty. It was hard to imagine that there was such a warm and beautiful paradise on the other side of the sky. He had no choice but to team up with demons. He had just escaped from the demonic city, and in the blink of an eye, he had entered a mysterious and dangerous maze. And at the end of the maze, waiting for him would be a true demon god. After fighting with the Taotai, he had a deeper understanding of the demon god's strength. Even with the Shenyuan sword and the mountain-shifting token, it would be difficult for him to win. If he lost this time, he would not submit to Qiongqi. He could only die in battle. He was not too afraid of death, but was that the end? Or Was he really not afraid of death? Without fear there was no need for bravery. Without pain there was no need for perseverance. Without worries there was no need for resolution. Who in the world was willing to be brave, persevere, and resolute? Or rather, those who were resolute were all unfortunate fellows. They did not hesitate to slaughter the common people and bear heinous sins. They did not fear mountains of blades or seas of fire, and killed all sorts of powerful enemies. Was it all for death? Yes, at this point there is no other choice. I can only swallow this Black Sun demon heart. I need more power. As long as he swallowed this Black Sun demon heart, everything would be solved. Why should he refuse? After all, this is the only way I can survive and help Brother Niu. Li Qingshan's expression fluctuated, and his eyes flickered. Qian Rongji smiled as she watched. Li Qingshan took out the demon heart of Black Sun. Suddenly his eyes flashed. He unsheathed his sword and slashed down heavily. The devil heart of the Black Sun was cut in half by the Xianyuan sword. With a clang, it shattered into pieces and scattered all over the sky, shining like stars. In an instant the demonic sky shook and the weather changed. Qian Rongji's smile also disappeared. The wind howled in the canyon as if angrily questioning his actions. Li Qingshan sheathed his sword. His eyes shone brightly like the stars in the sky. He laughed heartily. Thank you for reminding me. What? I've been keeping this thing because I'm still hoping that I can get lucky. I'm prepared to take it out to turn the tide when I'm in a difficult situation. That's what a normal person thinks. Yes, but unfortunately I am Li Qingshan. Back then he was still young and full of youthful vigor. He did not fear death and dared to charge into the Black Wind stronghold alone. Now that he had tasted the good wine, slept with the beauties, and fought against the strong enemies, he didn't dare to face death with emotion? If he was so cowardly from the beginning, Emperor Huang Xianyuan would not have given him this sword, and the demonic sky would not have chosen him. Even Brother Bull was just an old bull with a broken horn that he sold. He would not be the Li Qingshan of today. Along the way he had done some good deeds of chivalry, but at the same time he had killed many people and committed heinous crimes. Even until today he was still unwilling to put down the butcher's knife. He was determined to follow his heart and walk towards the 9 heavens. Those who kill will always be killed. There was no need to feel resentment or escape. If it was time to die, then die. The 9 heavens was not far away but in his heart. It was that cowherd boy who was unwilling to be mediocre. He was determined to follow his heart and live a happy life. Li Qingshan glanced at Qian Rongji. It's fine if it's others, but how can you not understand this logic? Behind her crazy appearance was a cruel and cunning heart. But in the depths, it was an even more hysterical madness. She wanted to set the world on fire. It wasn't just to pursue greater power and a longer lifespan. If she died, the world would explode and she would probably die immediately. She simply did not benefit herself and only focused on harming others. Compared to her, that kind of selfish evil was brimming with idyllic scenery. It's a pity that the demonic sky chose you and not me. Qian Rongji sighed. Because you are not Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan sheathed his sword and was in high spirits. Try to avoid Jiaoying. I'm afraid you are not a match for her. Cut the crap. I don't care if they are Jiaoying or Jiaoying. I'll kill them all if they come. As Li Qingshan berated her, he used the spirit turtle transformation. His bloodline completely transformed into a spirit turtle, and a silent and profound power of ruins and spread out, filling his organs, limbs, and bones. He no longer leaked any aura. Even his body gradually became indistinct, becoming colorless and transparent like clear water. He raised his right hand and looked at it before nodding in satisfaction. It was enough to fool the eyes of the evil god. Only the little snake on his wrist was particularly bright and distinct. He snorted coldly in dissatisfaction. All right. You're impressive. Qian Rongji was speechless. She felt that he was even more shameless than her sometimes. Was this where the difference lay? Thinking that, she also became transparent like water, merging perfectly with the surroundings. I probably won't be discovered like this. If it's not like I'm an idiot, I'll risk my life with whoever I see. Li Qingshan nodded in satisfaction and strode to the end of the valley. He glanced at the distant demonic sky one last time before silently merging into the crack of flesh and blood. During this process his body rippled and changed like flowing water. He did not come into contact with the squirming flesh and blood in the surroundings to avoid giving away any traces of himself. At the same time, the great freedom soul opened the eye on its forehead and observed the changes in the laws. Even without Chen Rongji's reminder, he knew that he might not necessarily be able to defeat Jianghu. This was not him underestimating himself. As his cultivation grew higher and higher, he constantly approached the realm of refining his spirit to return to the void. Instead, he understood his limitations even more. The way gods fought was completely different from cultivators. Techniques, arcane treasures, and formations were secondary. What mattered was their grasp over laws. In reality, techniques, arcane treasures, and formations were just an extension of laws. Whoever could control laws was a god. With the Xinyuan sword, Li Qingshan entered the state of being one with the world. He killed the white dolphin evil god like he was killing a pig. However, once the Taotai demon god descended, even if it was just a clone, he was immediately forced into a desperate situation. The most fundamental difference was not in strength, but in the level of authority. All cave abodes would have protective formations set up. As long as one stayed within the formation, they would be able to fight against stronger cultivators. However, if the control over the formation was taken away, they would be trapped. That was how he took down the dragon in the Shenming cave abode. The amazing thing about the Xinyuan sword was that it could greatly increase his authority. According to his current observation, this blood maze should be in existence between world and cave abode. Jianghu must have the highest level of authority to be able to fight against the 12 demon gods. Otherwise, he would not be able to maintain it. Even with the Xinyuan sword in hand, it would be difficult for him to beat her in this aspect. He might even be suppressed by her. If it was purely a battle of strength, she probably would not even need to come out personally. The 9 children of the evil gods would be enough to make him suffer. After all, if he did not enter the magical state of being one with the world, the white dolphin evil god would not be so easy to kill. What if the 9 white dolphin evil gods joined forces? Coupled with the unfathomable ancient evil god Jianghu, the situation would be even worse. This fissure was deeper and longer than he had imagined. He could not see the bottom even after traveling for hundreds of miles. However, the laws gradually changed, confirming some of Li Qingshan's thoughts. Therefore, he became even more cautious. After traveling for a while, just now he saw a round door that was tightly shut. Deep within the flesh beside the door, crisscrossing purplish-red blood vessels outlined a few crooked but ancient words, Xianpin door. Chapter 1609. According to Tao Te Ching, the immortal of grains is called Xianpin. The gate of Xianpin is called the root of heaven and earth. It is soft but not used diligently. Li Qingshan stopped in his tracks and stared at the gate of flesh and blood. It contained a mysterious law that not only separated the world of Taotai, but it also separated the boundary between life and death. It was like a world of its own and seemed to be the source of all life. Recalling what he had seen and heard along the way, he had a strange feeling. He cleared his throat and asked, "What should I do?" This gate of Xianpin was extraordinary. Even the great freedom primordial spirit could not enter it. If he destroyed it by force, it would definitely alarm the 9 snakelet. At such a time, he naturally had to ask Chen Rongji, the guide. Although she was crazy and evil, she had always been more resourceful. This time she did not disappoint him. She smiled, "Don't be anxious. It will open for a few days every month." Isn't it a little familiar? All right, I got it. Say no more. Li Qingshan immediately interrupted. The strange feeling in him grew stronger. However, he could not be bothered to listen to her nonsense and waited patiently. Perhaps it was because he had destroyed the Black Sun demon heart and lost much of the demonic sky's favor. This time his luck was terrible. After waiting for close to a month, the gate of Xianpin slowly opened. In an instant, a gush of dark red blood spurted out. Chen Rongji reminded, "Be careful not to touch it." Li Qingshan immediately dodged to the side. He could already tell that the blood was extraordinary. It could pollute spirituality and cleanse mana. If it was an ordinary magical weapon, even a drop of it would immediately turn it into scrap metal. Any Dharmakaya spells would be destroyed. Even with his fiend god body and the great freedom primordial spirit, he would probably be reduced to a mortal and become uncomfortable. At such a time, he could no longer be bothered to let his imagination run wild. He frowned and muttered, "This is definitely not the power that an evil god should have. It is the materialization of a certain law of Tao." He was even more careful and used the words "follow the heart" to the extreme. However, as the gate opened completely, blood gushed out like a river, filling the entire cavern in an instant. There was no more space to dodge. In the river of blood, all techniques were rendered useless. Even fleeing through space was impossible. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Qingshan immediately wielded the multiple layers of the spirit turtle's profound shell and made his way against the flow. Blood also contained water. Ruin's End was the source of all water, and the spirit turtle was the master of Ruin's End. It possessed a natural control and resistance to all laws and techniques that contained water. However, even with that being the case, the indestructible spirit turtle's profound shell was still rapidly corroded away, washed away layer by layer. However, under the cleansing of the blood, the spirit turtles and spirit Qinyu Yang Yang and Qing Yang Wu Qing and spirit Yang and Yu Wu and blood and shell Yang Yu and however Pin Qingshan and under the blood and under and blood. And Yu. Under and the Anshin and blood. And arm of the ape demon. Li Qingshan did not even look back. His left arm rapidly swelled up, turning into a black arm of an ape. It opened its huge, fan-like hand and enveloped the blood like it could blot out the sky. However, as soon as his hand came in contact with the blood, all of his presence vanished. The arm of the ape demon turned back into a regular hand, and he even felt numb. Let alone grabbing a mountain, he probably could not even hold something over 50 kilograms firmly. This was only the beginning. The numbness rapidly spread up his arm, swallowing the entire black arm. It showed no signs of stopping. This was not poison or acid at all, but the effects of a certain law. It was almost like a curse. Without any hesitation, Li Qingshan drew his sword and cut off his arm, cutting off most of his shoulder. The numbness immediately turned into excruciating pain. It was even worse than the torture of hell. He could not help but gasp before letting out a long sigh. My luck really isn't too good right now. If it were not for the Shenyuan sword, losing an arm probably would not have been enough to deal with. The wound did not heal very quickly either. He was forced to contract his blood vessels to stop the bleeding. He could forget about growing back his arm in a short amount of time. It was not a fatal wound, but it would definitely affect his battle prowess. Li Qingshan observed the surroundings. This was a relatively spacious space, the size of several football fields. It was completely made up of flesh and blood, constantly wriggling and changing its shape. It was narrow at the front and wide at the back like a circle, but not. The depths of the flesh and blood shone with a pink luster. If he closed his eyes and avoided the strange flesh and blood, the temperature would actually be rather pleasant. However, it was empty. Nothing was useful. There was not a single demon folk, nor a single magical beast. There was not even a single plant. Is this the blood maze? This is only one of them. The entire blood maze is composed of countless rooms like this. This place has just been washed away, so there's nothing left. Chen Rongji raised her head and hissed as she observed the surroundings. Li Qingshan discovered a few new paths too. Although the doors of flesh and blood were also tightly shut, they were not as difficult to pass through as the gate of Shenpin. How do I get to the Qiongqi demon world? I don't know. What? Say that again. I don't know. Li Qingshan squinted his eyes, radiating with dangerous killing intent. Chen Rongji explained, the locations of the rooms constantly change as they wriggle. These paths aren't a straight line either. And all of the rooms have a certain lifespan. The old rooms will be squeezed away and new rooms will be born. There are never unchanging markers, nor are there any absolutely correct paths. That's why it's called a maze. Do you want me to be trapped in here? Of course not. Who would lock themselves in the same cage as a vicious tiger? You were originally chosen by the demon domain, so you were blessed by the will of the heavens. Even if you wander around randomly in the maze, you'll definitely be able to reach where you want to go. But now, it's hard to say. You didn't say that in the beginning. Who would have thought that you would sever the Black Sun demon heart, just because of a disagreement? And if you can't clear the stage normally, this is the only path. I have no other choice. You can also return to the Taotai demon world. Maybe that senior of yours has calmed down and is willing to let you pass. After I smashed a mountain on his face? I hope you still have a mountain. Li Qingshan really wanted to strangle her to death, but he knew that she was right. Even if she had said all this in advance, he would still have stepped into this blood maze. He also didn't regret severing the Black Sun demon heart, because this was the path he had chosen. After cutting off the demon heart of the Black Sun, his mind became clear and bright again. All the transformations of gods and demons were improved, especially the newly born divine dragon transformation, which showed signs of a breakthrough. All of these were his fundamentals. When it comes to traversing mazes, Li Qingshan, have never feared anyone," Li Qingshan said proudly. Now that he had mastered the spirit turtle transformation, the spirit turtle was most skilled at projecting changes and comprehending the mysteries. How could he be trapped by a measly maze? With a shake of his body, he conjured several mirror clones, each leading to a different path. He could maintain many mirror clones at the same time now. Apart from that, he also had the thousands of clones of the Great Freedom Soul. Chapter 16:10. Li Qingshan glanced back at the Gate of Life and also took a step forward. He chose a path and ventured into the blood maze, with determination. Every single blood palace had several entrances. As a result, he advanced step by step, creating an equal number of clones that led to different blood palaces. The voices of people rang out from up ahead. Li Qingshan became even more careful as he approached slowly, entering a new blood palace. As far as the eye could see, there was actually a demon folk settlement inside. Even though he was already mentally prepared, he still widened his eyes, struggling to hide his surprise. The demonic city he had passed by earlier that could hold hundreds of millions of demon folk was much larger than any city he had seen in his past life. It basically seemed like a postmodernist sci-fi novel. The demon folk settlement before him was even more primitive than cannibal tribes. There were no decent buildings at all. More accurately, there was not even a shack. Whether they were men, women, young or old, they did not have a single piece of clothing on them. Naked, they were either walking or standing, lying or lying on flesh and blood. Several thousand demon folk were scattered across the large space in groups of 3 to 5. Fungi grew everywhere here, all of them bright red and plump, glistening with light. A few demon folk were currently harvesting, but it could not really be called work. They plucked them and shoved them into their mouths. They would be full after a few bites, lying there and resting lazily. Presumably, this was their source of food and water. There were also a few demon folk who were doing it, squeaking and moaning. The others did not even look at them. They did not feel embarrassed, nor did they feel tempted. Some of them even found it noisy, hiding in a corner and sleeping as they cursed. However, whether they were eating, sleeping or even mating, all of the demon folk seemed to be veiled. Their expressions were unclear. Perhaps I can find someone to lead the way, Li Qingshan pondered. He chose the demon folk who seemed to be the oldest, and his great freedom soul lunged over. The old demon folk was all skin and bones. His back was hunched as he slept in a corner in the distance. His body was covered in age spots and gave off a foul smell. He seemed like he did not have long to live either. His body stiffened slightly, but no one noticed it. Li Qingshan activated the soul-searching technique and easily obtained everything he wanted, but the result disappointed him. The old demon folk had lived for a total of 89 years. He had wandered around his entire life, and he had indeed visited quite a few blood palaces. He seemed to be living in search of water and grass. Once he finished off the fungi in a blood palace, he would move on to the next one. However, throughout his life, apart from eating and fucking, he would occasionally fight other demon folk for some inexplicable reason. His luck was not bad as he was not beaten to death. That was all. Li Qingshan suddenly understood what the veil covering their faces was. That was the color of ignorance and thoughtlessness. That kind of ambiguous expression was not something that a human or even a beast should have. At the very least, the demon folk outside had to compete for the sake of survival. They had to scheme against one another and kill one another. In particular, the demon folk at the very bottom would be dragged into war and invade other worlds. They had to obey orders or they might even be tortured to death. It was impossible for powerless old demon folk like them to live so long. Once they passed the prime of their lives, they would definitely be eliminated, or they might even become food for other demon folk. In this blood palace, the demon folk did not have to take part in the war between the 12 demon gods, nor did they have to face the threat of hunger and cold. The climate here was always suitable and there was always plenty of food. To their taste buds it was even quite delicious. They could eat and sleep every day. Who knew how easy it was? It could basically be described as a miniature paradise in the demon domain. However, it was fundamentally different. The people in the paradise were all kind-hearted people chosen by the Buddha. They had all been tempered by the mortal world and endured the torment of suffering. No matter how fertile the land of the paradise was, it still required a period of labor and waiting. However, the demon folk in the blood palace only migrated between the blood palaces, eating wherever they went. When they were tired, they would lie down and sleep, and when they woke up, they would work. They were like infants, living in their mother's wombs from birth to death. When the great freedom soul left his body, the old demon folk died silently. In the moment before his death, his expression was still ambiguous, as if he did not understand what death was. It was just a routine rest. Life was fleeting and death was like rest. Of course no one noticed it either. The flesh and blood squirmed, and his hunched body gradually merged with it, vanishing very soon. Afterwards even more fungi grew out, clusters of bright red, glistening and thriving. That's a lifetime too. Qian Rongji sighed. Li Qingshan suddenly felt a chill. The flesh and blood around him squirmed violently as it pressed over from all directions. It was suffocating. He gripped the hilt of his sword firmly, wanting to cut through it. Suddenly, he shook his head and discovered that the blood palace was just as spacious as before. The demon folk lived with ease, and the moaning demon folk had all quietened down too. They relaxed their bodies and closed their eyes, falling asleep. There was no land of dreams. There was nothing to think about during the day and nothing to dream about at night. Li Qingshan fished out his alcohol pouch and gulped down a few mouthfuls before letting out a long sigh. This place really is terrifying. Actually, it was not that he did not fear death, but he was even more afraid of living like this, completely unaware, without dreams or thoughts. That was why he had to fight and kill. He had to go through numerous painful blows before recovering from heavy injuries and being reborn from despair. I've heard that people already possess senses and memories before they're even born. They don't remember after they're born, but they're actually buried deep in their sea of consciousness, which is why people spend their entire lives searching for a peaceful and comfortable state like this. When cultivators reincarnate, what they fear the most is the mystery of the womb. That's not just because the frail bodies of infants can't bear their consciousness, but also because they might become intoxicated, unable to extricate themselves. If you're talking nonsense, are you talking about yourself? Li Qingshan snorted coldly. When I leave, if you don't want to leave, I can make you stay here. Perhaps Jiao Ying would be willing to accept you as his adopted daughter. Daughter? Hehe. Qian Rongji sighed with a smile. These muddle-headed demon folk are actually luckier than many people in the world. In other words, not being born is the luckiest. Li Qingshan did not agree. Yeah, not being born is the luckiest. Qian Rongji actually nodded in agreement. Then why don't you just die? Li Qingshan answered with a question. Because I want the world to understand this, Qian Rongji said matter-of-factly. Determination and fervor actually appeared in her ice-cold, snake-like eyes. Li Qingshan really felt like he was out of his mind to try and communicate with a madwoman. As a result, he said nothing more and continued forward with his clone. You should be questioning me? Qian Rongji mimicked Li Qingshan's voice and said gruffly, Oi bitch, you're contradicting yourself. Aren't you actually still trying to survive? Li Qingshan shot a vicious glance at her, but she answered her own question. I'll answer you. I'm contradicting myself and so are you. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped and enunciated each word clearly, if you mention me in the same breath as you again. Chapter 16:11. Li Qingshan could not be bothered with her. Now that he was trapped in the enemy's camp, it was time for him to cut off all means of retreat and advance bravely. As for right and wrong, he would talk about it after he survived. What reasoning could there be with a dead man? Qian Rongji stared at him silently and curled up her body. She gave up on some plans and sighed in her heart. Tiger, after all, he is a tiger. A brave and diligent person was not someone who could see through everything. Instead, he was someone who could pick up and let go at the same time. He had a strong and fearless confidence. This was something she could never hope to achieve. Therefore, she never dared to provoke him too much. She could not touch a tiger's butt. If she really angered him, he would slash at her without any reason. Forget it, I have tried my best to persuade him to swallow the demon heart of Black Sunday. Now let's see what fate has in store for us. Li Qingshan strode forward and went deeper into the blood labyrinth. Every time he stepped into a new blood palace, he would encounter a new path. He was calm and used his divine arts and spells freely. The mirror image and demonic thought doppelgangers multiplied into 2 into 4 into 8. Hundreds and thousands of doppelgangers stepped through thousands and thousands of blood palaces. The demonic thought doppelgangers were too weak and could not be too far away from the main body. However, the mirror image doppelgangers were stronger and acted as support points to maintain the existence of the demonic thought doppelgangers. Like a big tree, the mirror image doppelgangers were the branches and the demonic thought doppelgangers were the leaves, stretching towards higher and higher skies. And Li Qingshan was naturally the trunk and root of this big tree. His eyes flickered. Now that they were magnified thousands of times, a layer of light condensed on his eyes. It was like the compound eyes of an insect, formed by countless hexagons. Each hexagon reflected a scene, showing the location of each doppelganger and the scene they encountered. The blood labyrinth was like a huge beehive, and Jianghu was the hidden queen bee. Li Qingshan transformed into the same form to fight against it. At the same time, he analyzed the structure of the beehive and searched for a possible way out. The more demonic doppelgangers were created, the weaker they became. They had to hide their tracks to avoid detection, so their speed was very slow. They were not much faster than an ordinary person, but they had the advantage in numbers. As time passed, he experienced more and more blood palaces and gradually gained some insights. After nearly a month, Li Qingshan stopped in his tracks. He let out a sigh of relief and smiled. What blood maze? It's just SOSO. He had already calculated the overall structure of the blood labyrinth, as well as the exits to the 12 demon realms. He even had a rough estimate of the core region where Jianghu was located. Over the past few days he had been paying attention to avoid it. The only problem now was to determine which of the 12 exits led to the Qiongqi demon realm. We can eliminate one, so that's 11. If there's no other way, we can only try them one by one. Now that he could gather all of his avatars, it wouldn't take him long to reach the destination with the speed of his main body. However, at this time, the blood labyrinth violently wriggled as the roaring river of blood washed through countless blood palaces. As if the demon folk had received the news beforehand, they had moved to the safety of the blood palaces a long time ago. Many of his avatars were unable to retreat in time, so they were swallowed by the surging river of blood. Li Qingshan was not surprised. He knew it was time for the gate of Xianpin to open again. There was no need for him to wait so carefully for the gate of Xianpin to open when he left anyway. He could directly charge out with his sword. As long as he left the blood labyrinth, even Jianghu would not be able to do anything to him. Suddenly, the blood labyrinth began to wriggle violently. The entire space shook. All of the demon folk in the blood palace were tossed around. If they were surrounded by tough rock instead of soft flesh and blood, probably all of them would have been badly battered. What's going on? Li Qingshan's expression suddenly changed drastically. He had lost contact with all of his avatars. Could it be that my whereabouts were exposed? He immediately gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, ready for battle. However, after waiting for a while, no enemy attacked. The violent tremors gradually settled down. Li Qingshan let go of the hilt of his sword and opened his eyes, scanning the surroundings. He was immediately surprised. He discovered that even the laws of the world had changed. Of course, the essence remained the same, but the form was completely different. Li Qingshan frowned. He felt like he was playing with a 17th round Rubik's Cube. Right when he was about to complete it after so much difficulty, someone had stolen it away and messed it up again. He immediately felt an urge to kill someone. What should he do now? Was he supposed to play with it again? However, the blood labyrinth right now was no longer the same one as before. Instead, it was a brand new labyrinth. Probably even his location had changed, let alone the 12 exits. He needed to scout out the path again with his avatars before the next upheaval. He needed to analyze the situation again and then choose one out of the 12 exits. His chances of success were only a 12th. If he was lucky, he could succeed once out of 12 attempts. Every attempt would take 12 months, which was an entire year. However, his luck right now was very terrible. Perhaps he might not even be able to make it out in a decade, or perhaps he might never make it out. In the blood labyrinth, Zhou Ying's will affected everything. Looks like we're trapped here. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows. I'm thinking that this might not be to trap you. Qian Rongji pondered. Oh, is there someone else here? I don't know. What are you going to do now? Ask them to give me a way out. Li Qingshan took a deep breath and roared towards the sky. It was like a tiger's roar, like a dragon's roar. Waves of sound waves surged out, and the surrounding flesh and blood rippled. With lightning speed, it spread across the millions of blood palaces. In an instant, a powerful will gathered on his body, forming a substantial pressure. Was Jianghu. Li Qingshan arched his back slightly and squinted his eyes. His eyes turned red. What if they don't give you a way out? Qian Rongji asked with a smile. Then I'll kill my way out, Li Qingshan said calmly. I also have a small request. Can you let me speak first? What are you plotting? It's just a test. If you're dead, how can I live alone? All right. Li Qingshan stood there without budging. Soon, 9 abnormally powerful auras rapidly approached him. Rushing into the blood palace he resided in a single moment. 9 evil gods. Li Qingshan's eyes widened, but all he saw were 9 little babies. Each of them wore a red tutu with their hair tied up. They were barefooted, had black eyes and fair skin. Not only did they not look ferocious or scary, but they also looked extremely cute. However, the auras they gave off were clearly 9 evil gods, and each of them was stronger than the white dolphin evil god. His heart sank. These 9 evil gods were not as simple as 9 evil gods teaming up. They were connected by blood and mind. They formed a formation and sealed off all his paths of escape. Before they even attacked, the pressure was already as heavy as a mountain. 9 was an extreme number, but it had infinite variations. In terms of combat power, even 20 evil gods combined might not be able to defeat them. No wonder Jianghu could fight against the 12 demon gods. With this blood maze and the 9 evil gods, he could even fight a true god. Who are you? How dare you come to the blood palace and court death? The 9 evil gods asked in a childish voice. Li Qingshan was about to answer and please them to open up a path so that they would not die. However, he remembered Qian Rongji's request and decided to listen to what she had to say. Qian Rongji slid down from Li Qingshan's wrist and transformed back into a fat woman. We are here to kill Jianghu. Before she finished speaking, she felt a chill on her back. That pair of crimson eyes was staring at her coldly. With that said, there was no room for compromise. They had to fight to the death. With just you? Jianghu laughed loudly with a murderous aura. Qian Rongji suddenly opened her mouth and took out a pig's head. She held it in her hand and showed it to Jianghu. Jianghu immediately stopped smiling. He could tell that it was the head of an evil god. Mother, it's not a pig. Because your power comes from her, you can't resist her, so you think of her as too strong. Actually, Jianghu is just an evil god. How much stronger can he be compared to this pig? Jianghu looked at each other and seemed to be shaken. Qian Rongji stuffed the pig's head into her mouth again and said with a smile, "Why don't you let us try? Failure won't do you any harm. Or are you willing to be trapped here forever and maintain this appearance forever?" Li Qingshan suddenly understood what she was testing. Even ordinary people would find such a dull and muddle-headed world boring, let alone powerful evil gods. With their power they could do whatever they wanted in any world. The blood maze was constantly changing in order to trap the 9 evil gods. And these children had the intention to kill their mother. Chapter 16:12. The Jianghu evil god's eyes flickered, and his lips quivered as he communicated telepathically. His 9 pairs of round, dark eyes glanced back and forth at Li Qingshan, as if he was judging his capabilities. They could tell with a single glance that Qian Rongji was only a demon emperor. Let alone killing Jianghu, she could not even deal with that pig head. Li Qingshan's expression did not change. Suddenly, the Jianghu evil god said in a childish voice, "Humph, why would mother be afraid of a cripple with only 1 arm like you? Brothers and sisters, let's go. Let mother teach them a lesson personally." As they said that, they retreated at the same time, but they asked in unison, "Oh right, you know where she is, right? If you don't, hee." His fair and rosy little face was filled with innocence and cruelty. That was probably the innate talent of all demon folk. "Don't worry, brothers and sisters. Of course we know." Qian Rongji turned around and glanced at Li Qingshan with a smile. "Right?" Li Qingshan nodded silently. "That's good." The Jianghu evil god left in satisfaction. In the end he said, "If you dare to lie to us, we will never spare you. Mother will not spare you either." "All right, they're gone." Qian Rongji turned into a little snake again and wrapped around Li Qingshan's wrist. "I acted on my own. Please don't be angry, sir." Li Qingshan remained silent for a very long time. He did not hold much hope for a peaceful negotiation in the first place, and he was also prepared for a great battle. Just now, the Jianghu evil god's strength was even above his expectations. If he added Jianghu's support, it would be another bitter battle with a slim chance of survival. He could not criticize Qian Rongji's sowing discord. It was equivalent to eliminating 20 evil god-level enemies out of thin air. Now, as long as he got rid of Jianghu with the Shenyuan sword in his hand, he could enter the state of unity of heaven and man at any time. Even if the Jianghu evil god suddenly changed sides, he would not be much of a threat. But all of this still caused him to feel deeply displeased. The devilish domain was simply filled with all sorts of evil deeds in the world at all times, and he felt that if he stayed in the devilish domain for too long, even his state of mind would be greatly affected, causing him to become more and more vexed and difficult to endure. Let's kill our way out of this blood maze as soon as possible and settle our bet with Qiongqi at Mount Qingqi before leaving the demon domain. With that in mind, Li Qingshan began to calculate again. It was a rather difficult task to find the exit to the Qiongqi demon realm among the 12 exits. However, there was only one location for the Jianghu. As long as it was calculated, there was no possibility of it being wrong. After a series of calculations, he realized that although the blood maze had undergone great changes as a whole, the place where Jianghu resided should not have changed. It was still in the core region of the blood maze and controlled everything like a queen bee. As a result, everything became even simpler. He did not even have to go around in circles to find a path. All he had to do was kill his way over. Li Qingshan hovered in the air. He closed his eyes and turned around slowly, adjusting his direction carefully. Suddenly he stopped and opened his eyes. He raised his single arm and threw a punch. Bang, 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 bang. The aura of the punch tore through the walls of flesh and blood. A path that led to the heavens pierced through countless blood palaces, crushing all the demon folk in the way and heading straight for the very depths of the blood maze. At that moment, the blood maze was like a colossal monster that had suddenly awakened. The flesh and blood in the surroundings squirmed violently, pressing towards him. The blood palaces rapidly shrank and became extremely cramped. Invisible laws restrained and pressed down on him. Suddenly he felt like he was shouldering a tremendous burden. Pustules protruded from the walls and burst open one by one, revealing white eyes that had no pupils and were bloodshot. They stared at him in unison with an indescribable look in their eyes. Li Qingshan's hair stood on end. The invisible gaze seeped into all of his pores, triggering the most primitive terror. It was the terror of a weak creature facing a powerful unknown creature. However, he did not resist this terror. He raised his remaining arm and looked at his trembling right hand. Yes, this is the terror. Countless flesh sprouted from the walls of flesh and blood again. They were so densely packed that it made him itch all over. In the blink of an eye, they grew into countless tentacles. The tips all split open, splitting into 8 segments and turning into mouthparts covered in sharp teeth. They let out abnormally sharp screams like the cries of infants as they wrapped around him and bit at him. All of this was enough to make a demon emperor have a mental breakdown immediately. Even evil gods would fall into a frenzy or even suffer from chi deviation. Li Qingshan was deeply affected, but he still did not suppress it with the spirit turtle. He allowed the frenzied thoughts to rampage through his sea of consciousness. Yes, it's this madness. After coming to the demon domain, the various gloom, hesitation, and loathing he had accumulated gradually overflowed, turning into a hysterical rage. The tiger demon's fury. He suddenly unfurled his wings of wind and roared at the sky. His murderousness was like the wind. In that moment, the tiger demon's malevolence reached an unprecedented level. It merged into the fierce wind created by the unfurling wings of wind, shredding all the tentacles and piercing all the eyes. The blood palace he resided in swelled up to several times its original size. It was still constantly accumulating a storm, mixed with lightning and thunder. Jianghu, I'm coming. Li Qingshan stood in the middle of the wind and lightning. The storm had accumulated to the limit. He flapped his wings gently. With a boom, the blood palace shattered. Wind and lightning rumbled together as he rushed into the depths of the blood maze. He charged straight in, bursting through the numerous barriers. He ripped apart all the demon folk he came across mercilessly. At that moment, there was no pity or hesitation in his heart. There was only bloodthirst and brutality. Wherever he passed by, blood mixed with corpses, bones and flesh, forming a river of blood. It followed the direction he had traveled in, gathering and whistling towards him. Boom! The storm smashed through an extraordinarily tough and heavy wall, suddenly entering a huge blood palace that was over 100 times larger than regular blood palaces. What? As the river of blood flowed, it turned into a great waterfall, rapidly drowning the ground. Li Qingshan gazed over. A mountainous mushroom of flesh and blood stood in the center of the blood palace. It was similar to the mushrooms that demon folk ate. Its top was shaped like a placenta. A half-human, half-snake woman sat on it. Her loose hair covered her face as she hugged her slightly bulging belly, gently humming an ancient song. The woman seemed to be enveloped in the radiance of motherhood. Her singing was gentle and ethereal, filled with tenderness and a certain wondrous power. It immediately silenced the whistling of the storm. Even the ruthlessness in Li Qingshan's heart settled down. For a moment he even began to doubt whether he had come to the wrong place or not. Jianghu? Who are you? Why have you invaded my palace? Why have you killed my child? The singing came to a halt. The woman slowly turned around. Her beautiful face was filled with resentment. Li Qingshan raised his remaining arm and threw a punch. There is no need for reason to kill. Chapter 16:13. The fist aura broke through the void, carrying with it a white aura, and rushed towards Jiaoying like a mountain. Li Qingshan came with anger, and even the evil gods did not dare to take this punch head-on. Jiaoying's face flashed with disdain, and she waved her hand lightly. The fist aura was blocked by an invisible barrier and exploded, only causing a ripple on the barrier. Jiaoying was slightly surprised. Li Qingshan's strength was beyond her expectations, far surpassing the average evil god. But that's all there is to it. The sky was filled with wind and thunder, and the violent aura swept up torrential waves of blood, crashing and crashing in the blood palace, violently slamming against it. Thousands of waves were swept up, but they could not get close to the giant mushroom. Without hesitation, Li Qingshan flapped his wings and swooped down, waving his fist again. This time it was not just the fist aura but also the strength of the ox demon. His whole body pressed down like a mountain, and he did not believe that he could not break Jiaoying's defense. Jiaoying pointed with her index finger again. Freeze! Li Qingshan suddenly stopped, and he was frozen in midair. The howling wind and thunder calmed down, and even the wings of the wind god disintegrated. He gritted his teeth and roared, using the strength of the ox demon. His muscles bulged and his veins popped, but he still could not break free from this invisible restraint. Jiaoying said, "You dare to speak arrogantly in front of me with this little ability." This blood maze was her cave, her world, and she was the only god here. She was in the state of being one with heaven at all times, and her words were law. A simple body freezing spell had infinite power, and no evil god was her match. Without such a method she could not control the Jiuzi evil god, and everything was under her control. This was not the difference in power but the difference in authority. As an ancient existence that was infinitely close to a true god, her understanding and control of the laws was far from what Li Qingshan, who had entered the state of being one with heaven by chance, could compare. Jiaoying hooked her finger and pulled Li Qingshan closer. She laughed sinisterly. "You don't need a reason? But I had plenty of reasons. I will crush you inch by inch to avenge my children." "Ah, those kids of yours are just walking corpses. What's the difference between being alive and being dead? As for those 9 bastards who wanted to kill their mother, they deserve to die." Li Qingshan glanced at her abdomen scornfully. "And the vile spawn of demon folk in your belly. Why must you let him suffer and commit evil in this world? Why don't you let me end him for you?" After being hit by the great mockery technique, the Jiaoying immediately flew into a rage. Li Qingshan's eyes flashed. "Now, the divine dragon heavenly works creation." He raised his head to the sky and roared. The dragon roared as he unsheathed his sword. Li Qingshan suddenly broke free from his shackles and became one with his sword. He transformed into an extremely strong and magnificent sword gleam, piercing through the invisible barrier and illuminating Jiaoying's pale face. The Xianyuan sword had always been able to increase his authority. Not only had the divine dragon transformation unified all of the powers and laws of the miniature world, but it had also greatly strengthened his control over the Xianyuan sword. The might of that strike was even greater than when he killed evil god White Dolphin. It was no longer just one with his sword, but a divine dragon wielding the sword. Not only could he contend against Jiaoying's authority, but he could even kill him in a single strike with the power of the Xianyuan sword. The light from the sword illuminated the entire blood palace, vaguely containing a dragon's roar. It became the only thing in the blood maze that was not under Jiaoying's control. At that critical moment, Jiaoying suddenly raised her head and bent over. Her hair drifted down. The sword whistled past her cheek and her hair fell. A strand of blood flowed down from her forehead, but the wound did not heal. Her expression changed drastically. She could not help but cry out, "The Xianyuan sword!" Li Qingshan returned to his original form. With a sword in hand he said proudly, "You actually recognize this sword." While evaluating Jiaoying's strength he was thinking of a countermeasure. Even though the power of the Xianyuan sword had been greatly enhanced, it was different from the battle with evil god White Dolphin. This blood maze was Jiaoying's territory. He could not maintain the state of oneness of heaven and man for long. Every second consumed a great deal of energy. With his own miniature world, he could at most launch 8 strikes. Now there were only 7 left. 7 chances, 7 chances of survival. If he couldn't chop off Jiao Ying's head with 7 consecutive strikes, then he would be dead. So it's a little bastard from the Yuxiong family. I have one more reason. Don't even think about leaving this place alive today. Jiao Ying soon regained his composure. The hatred on his face grew even more intense. Li Qingshan remained calm, looking for an opportunity to launch his sword. He pondered in his heart. This Jiao Ying's origins are really ancient. It seems that the reason these primordial demon gods were exiled here is related to the Yuxiong family. If he did not have this Xianyuan sword, he would already be a distinguished guest of the Taotai demon god. But in many situations, it was all thanks to this Xianyuan sword. Therefore he had no regrets in his heart. Even if there was a conspiracy, it was still a powerful weapon. Relying on oneself was always better than relying on others. Jiao Ying muttered something in a low voice. His pale face flushed unnaturally. In an instant, all the exits of the Blood Palace were tightly locked, including the huge hole that Li Qingshan had opened up. Amidst the surging sound of water, dark red blood swiftly spread out. However, it was not ordinary demon blood. Instead, it was similar to the river of blood that Li Qingshan encountered when he first entered the door of Xianpin. It had the ability to cleanse one's magic power and contaminate one's spirituality. Li Qingshan frowned. Relying on his fiend god body, he was forced to sever his arm to protect himself when he was stained with this tainted blood. Until now he still hadn't recovered. Once this blood flooded the Blood Palace, he would no longer have a place to stand. Of course, this Blood Palace could not trap him. He could naturally swing his sword and kill his way out. However, if he could not walk out of this blood maze, he would have to face endless pursuit until he exhausted his last bit of energy. Even the Jiuzi evil god, who had rebelled against Chen Rongji, would probably betray her once again if he realized that he could not kill this mother. If it was as expected, the Jiuzi evil god was currently paying attention to the situation here. In the blink of an eye, the tainted blood had already flooded up and enveloped Jiao Ying. Be it his physical body or divine arts, he could no longer get close to her. Meeting on a narrow path, the brave wins. Li Qingshan let out a long laugh and flicked the tip of his sword with his finger, causing it to ring loudly. There are no gods 3 feet above my head. My life's sorrow, joy, honor, and disgrace have long been entrusted to the sharpness of my sword. Those who use the sword die by the sword. Life is life, death is death. What regrets do I have? There was no bright moon here, and he could not use the sword of the moon that he had used to massacre the demonic capital. Even if there was a bright moon, it would probably be difficult for him to use it. However, he still had himself. No matter how difficult a situation a person was in, he would always have himself as his companion. In his heart there was a world, and even more so, the various transformations of gods and demons. Each transformation was a great Tao that could be transformed into sword techniques. First sword, bull demon strength sinks in the mud. Li Qingshan disappeared in an instant, and even the tip of his sword disappeared without a trace. In the world, there was only a stubborn will that would never yield, as well as the homeland and mountains that had long been far away, condensing into a heavy and majestic sword intent. The surging tainted blood was suddenly pressed down several feet, appearing even more viscous and filthy, as though it was about to solidify. Jiao Ying could not help but lower his head. His body had become 10,000 times heavier. Every inch of his flesh and every bone was sinking down. His organs were about to shift positions and he felt dizzy and nauseous. Even his consciousness was being pulled down deep, all the way to the 9 underworlds. He should have controlled the laws and fought with all his might, but deep in his heart, an inextricable sense of sorrow welled up. How many tens of thousands of years have I been exiled here? Wouldn't I still be trapped in this maze, never to be freed? She suddenly shook her head. No, I cannot be disturbed. This sword not only carried out the Tao of the bull demon, but it also contained Li Qingshan's understanding of the Tao of the heavenly demon. It could kill, but it could also destroy the heart. At this moment, Jiao Ying's body and mind were collapsing under the heavy pressure. However, with the powerful cultivation that she had accumulated over 1,000,000 years, she forcefully withstood the weight. Before the first sword stopped, another sword was raised. Second sword, Tiger Demon Bone Refinement Frenzy. The heavy gravity suddenly disappeared, and the tainted blood that had been pressed down suddenly rose into the air, floating in the air bit by bit. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Jiao Ying's long hair danced in the wind, but she felt the existence of the wind. The sound of the wind whistled into her ears and blew into her 36,000 pores. It was not the wind of the north, south, or east, but the destructive metal wind that contained the murderous aura of heaven and earth. The sound of the wind awakened even more distant memories. She had once fought on the battlefield with weapons in hand. Even though she was exiled in the end, that passion flowed in the blood of every ancestor. She wanted to jump up and fight with Li Qingshan at all costs. However, her abdomen moved and she curled up her body again. She covered her abdomen with both hands, silently resisting the invasion of the metal wind. Blood flowed out from every pore, but it was not enough to destroy her body. She knew clearly in her heart that such swift and fierce sword force couldn't be sustained for long. Third sword, ape demon fishing for the moon, emptiness. The sound of the wind suddenly stopped and the scenery changed. Everything around her disappeared, turning into a boundless emptiness as if there was nothing. Emptiness was form and form was emptiness. In a daze, she saw the children who lived as if they were floating and died as if they were resting. But in Li Qingshan's words, they were the walking corpses. Then she saw Jiao Zi, who was filled with resentment towards her, cursing her death in the darkness. All of her efforts had turned to nothing. What was the point? This strike did not possess the destructive power of the previous two strikes, but it threw her mind into disorder, leaving her at a loss. Fourth sword, spirit turtle suppresses the seas, omens of good and ill fortune. The moment the illusion vanished, an omen of ill fortune descended. This strike was the sword of fate. It did not harm her at all, but it severed her destiny as the evil god of the demon domain and the ruler of the blood maze. It sealed up all of her heavenly blessings. Fifth sword, Phoenix's Nerva, undying heart. The phoenix's cry was clear, and her nature was noble and pure. The flames of her heart were inextinguishable, and the 5 virtues did not decline. She struggled in the raging flames. The color of the flames was like a red lotus, extremely pure and blazing. Even the surging blood could not extinguish it, as if it was the legendary karmic fire. Although she felt great pain, there was no anger or resentment in her heart. Instead, she was filled with guilt and remorse. It was as if she was not being tortured by the enemy, but was atoning for the sins she had committed. Sixth sword, Qilin's footsteps pity the common people. The flames extinguished and darkness shrouded her. Even though she had lost many of her blessings because she had destroyed the Black Sun demon heart, this world was still formed by the primordial Qilin. In an instant, a wisp of the demon domains will descended and materialized into a black Qilin. Its iron hooves trampled down on her body mercilessly. Heaven and earth were heartless and all living things were like straw dogs. The power of this strike was even greater than the previous ones. At this moment, it was not Li Qingshan who wanted to destroy her, but Mo Tian who wanted to destroy her. These 6 strikes were as fast as lightning, and they were almost continuous strikes. The sword style combined the 3 demon transformation and 3 god transformation, using the demon transformation to mess things up, and the god transformation to judge. When the black Qilin dissipated like smoke, Jiao Ying was already severely injured and sprawled on the ground. Her internal organs were severely injured, and all the bones in her body were crushed. She no longer had the strength to resist, and even her spiritual will was completely destroyed. It's time to end this. The last strike, Divine Dragon Heavenly Works Creation. This strike was not only the Divine Dragon Sword, but also the integration of the 7 god demon transformations. It stimulated all the remaining power in the small world to destroy all of Jiao Ying's vitality. As the sword fell, dragons soared and tigers leaped, scales flew, phoenixes danced and bulls howled. At this moment, Jiao Ying suddenly stood up. Her face was covered in blood, and her expression was mournful. She desperately waved her hands to grab the blade of the sword. Humph, a deathbed struggle. The blade of the sword paused for a moment, and both her hands and arms were minced. However, taking advantage of this pause, she desperately stretched her neck and opened her mouth to bite the blade of the sword, making a loud clanging sound. Li Qingshan was surprised. Compared to the body, the head was an even more fatal point. However, he did not hesitate. He had poured all of his strength into the strike, so it was not something he could control either. Sword chi rushed towards the top of her head, and the light from the sword shot towards the bull. Jiao Ying could not help but open her mouth. With a turn of the sword, it plunged into her chest and severed her final sliver of vitality. Immediately, the surging tide of blood receded. Flesh, blood, and rotten flesh fell down with a rustle. The entire blood maze began to collapse. The demon folk were panic-stricken. The mushrooms they had plucked rapidly withered in their hands, giving off a foul smell. Li Qingshan had noticed a long time ago that her snake body was connected to the huge mushroom, becoming one with the entire blood maze. As a matter of fact, it could even be said that the entire blood maze was an extension of her body. Although she was immobilized because of this, giving him the opportunity to use his sword form, she basically possessed endless power. No matter how heavily injured she was, she could recover. If 7 consecutive strikes still could not kill her, then he would be the one dead right now. But now the outcome had already been determined. He could not help but exhale deeply, using his remaining strength to slowly draw out the Shenyuan sword. The Jiaoying suddenly moved again, actually holding on and refusing to die. She murmured to herself sorrowfully, "Was I wrong? My children, I just wanted to protect them, let them live well, not suffer hunger or cold, not be slaughtered. Was I wrong?" Li Qingshan remained silent. What could he do about it? They were demon folk after all. Suddenly he heard a weak but powerful heartbeat, which also contained exuberant life force. He could not help but be stunned. That's impossible. He understood the power of the Shenyuan sword, the best. The Jiaoying was just experiencing a momentary recovery before death, so how could she still possess such life force? The Jiaoying lowered her head. Her arms had already been shattered. She only rubbed her abdomen with a gentle gaze. "I see." Li Qingshan suddenly recalled that when the black Qilin stomped down, she had bent over and used her back to block the iron hooves, protecting the child in her belly. Even when the flames burned and the metal wind blew, she was still the same. In the end, she extended her hands and bit the edge of the sword, also protecting the child in her belly. Suddenly, an indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Something seemed to shake violently. The Jiaoying said feebly, "Please, spare him. He's not a demon folk yet." "What did you say?" Li Qingshan frowned. With a swing of the sword, he cut open her abdomen and a loud cry rang out. A wet and wrinkled baby lay in the bloody womb of its mother. As if he had been struck by lightning, Li Qingshan suddenly became stunned. The infant was ugly, but he was not a demon folk. He was just a regular infant, the son of a human. The Shenyuan sword fell out of his hand. He extended his trembling hand and scooped up the infant from the womb. His hand was covered in blood, the scarlet red dazzling. The Jiaoying stared at the infant blankly and began humming an ancient song again. It was gentle and indistinct, filled with tenderness and filled with a wondrous power. It made the infant stop crying and settle down. At the same time, the laws of the demon domain operated silently. Invisible demon Qi wanted to seep into the infant's body and bestow him with a demon heart, turning him into a true demon folk. "So, you haven't become a demon god?" Li Qingshan's voice was extremely exhausted, but he did not receive an answer. The gentle, indistinct song had already dispersed. "That's fantastic. That bitch is finally dead. We're all free. What do we do with this person?" "Obviously kill him. I want that sword. No, it's mine." The Jiaoying evil god walked over from the collapsed blood palace. He chatted and laughed innocently, but it was also filled with chilling cruelty. They grew rapidly, bursting through their red undergarments. Their figures changed at every moment, becoming mature and vicious. They approached Li Qingshan step by step. Li Qingshan did not move at all, as if he did not hear anything. Suddenly he shook his head. His face was already covered in tears. "Look, we've scared this kid to tears." A vicious man sneered, leading to a roar of laughter. A seductive woman said, "I'd like to play with him." Li Qingshan hugged the infant and widened his scarlet eyes. He questioned the sky. "Buddha, even if all demon folk are guilty of heinous sins, are demon folk born as demon folk?" The heavens were speechless. His voice probably could not reach the land of ultimate bliss. All he saw was a black sun hanging high in the sky. "Then come at me." In that moment, the black sun fell, and the demon heart condensed, piercing through the endless space and arriving before him in a single moment. He swallowed it in a single gulp. The snake demon devours the sun and incinerates this body. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.